He was a famous trumpet man from out Chicago way. He had a boogie style that no one else could play. He was a top man at his craft. But then his number came up and he was gone in the draft. He's in the army now, a blowing reveille. He's a boogie-woogie bugle boy of Company B. He puts the boys to sleep for boogie every night and wakes them up the same way in the early bright. They clap their hands and stamp their feet because they know how he plays. So someone gives him a beat, it really breaks it up when he plays reveille. He's a boogie-woogie bugle boy of Company B. And the Company Jobson, he plays reveille. He's a boogie-woogie bugle boy of Company B.
Well, even though that song is about 80 years old, it's still fun to hear, and it sounds contemporary today, doesn't it? Welcome to our coverage of Sailforth 250. This is day 3. We had 3 hours on Saturday on our birthday, July 4th, 3 hours yesterday, July 5th, and we continue on with our coverage for another 3 hours today. We've got a lot of exciting packages, some fascinating interviews, lots of good footage. I also want to thank our friends at EarthCam for providing the great footage they've had around New York Harbor here for the past 3 days. I'm Gary Jobson. Lucky me, I get to be your host. And boy, what a lot of action we've had over the last couple days. The problem is today, the weather's not so clement out there. A little rain has come in. Happily, it stayed away for the July 4th, but it's not going to dampen our spirits. And there's lots of people in the city and around the harbor taking a look at some of the boats. So thankfully, we've had a lot of help with Ayo Haynes, who's been at the Intrepid Pier, talking to all kinds of people, learning what's people are happening around the country and around the world, really, and what they think. And Ayo, welcome aboard. Nice to see you. And I notice that you've got the super transport plane, the Concorde, behind you, which would fly across the ocean in 3.5 hours, twice the speed of sound. And even though that plane is about 50 years old, it still looks pretty modern to me. So how are things down on the pier?
Oh, Gary, it has been so incredible each day. We move our location to give you a new view of where we are. Today we're on the second floor of the Intrepid. Actually, my very first time ever on the Intrepid, seeing this incredible museum. As we walk through the museum, you get to see different planes and flight gear and everything around just about military flight. It's incredible. And so today we're here with, like you said, with the backdrop of the Concorde behind us. We've got the Amerigo Vespucci still on our left as our backdrop as well. There's just so much beauty around, and it's incredible. It may be made of steel, but it's still gorgeous.
I understand there was quite an elaborate reception and dinner on the Amerigo Vespucci last night. Some members of the New York Yacht Club were there, and a bunch of naval officers were there. And all of them came back, said that the vessel is absolutely pristine, and as you expect, the Italian boats had everything absolutely flawless out there. So, Ayo, I have a question for you. Now that you've seen a lot of
Gary,
these vessels...
Sure.
No, my question is, of all the vessels you've seen so far, what would you say is the most interesting?
Oh, well, I was going to say that just like my invitation to Taylor Swift's wedding, I didn't get the invitation to the dinner yesterday at the Vespucci. But I would say that is most impressive. I really have never seen a tall ship this close. There are a couple others in port. And I walked around yesterday after we wrapped, and actually during the different packages when we were back in the studio with you. It's so incredible to see how large these ships are, how the technology has advanced, but that these are the same ships that went around the world. We have the three masts here on the Amerigo Vespucci. We actually will hopefully get a picture of some sailors who are on there. They look a little older, so they maybe were on the Vespucci many years ago. And they've got special medals around their neck. They're in gray shirts. That's the most impressive by far. Everyone says the same thing. It is the most beautiful ship in the world.
I love the fact that you mentioned technology. You know, we look at these tall ships from yesteryear and say, oh, that's from a long time ago. But you got to remember, in real time, they were trying to deliver lots of cargo and have more cargo in their vessel, hence make more money, or they had naval operations and missions to take out, so they wanted their vessels to be safe and go fast. I mean, there's nothing like being faster than your competitor out there in the water or your naval rival. So these ships all advanced and got faster, better, more productive as time went on, and you can kind of see that between some of the older vessels and some of the newer vessels, including that Concorde behind you, which makes me wonder if we'll ever see supersonic transport again, so you can go from New York to London in 3.5 hours as opposed to 7 or 8 hours.
I'm hopeful. I actually think that will happen, and I can't wait to buy my ticket. And I understand, did you say yesterday that you had been on the Concorde previously?
I had. I got to do a trip from New York to Paris on Air France, and it was delightful. Every seat was full. The food was sumptuous, and the only problem was 3.5 hours after taking off out of Kennedy, we landed in Paris de Gaulle's airport. You know, I thought I wanted to enjoy this for a little bit longer. But anyway, it was great fun and great ride. I was honored to get to ride on it at least once in my lifetime. So we have a special.
And you know what? Today is the perfect day for more people to come to see the Intrepid and to see the tall ships, because the crowds are almost a quarter of what they were yesterday. And even though it's slightly misting, it's not raining hard. The weather is perfect. It's about 70-something degrees. There's a nice breeze, and there are no lines to get on. Yesterday, the lines were around and down the corner, and you had to wait your turn to take pictures with the different sailors. But now it's empty, and so you can actually come and take your time really looking at the technology that's aboard the ships.
Well, it's a nice invitation to people that are around the waterfront, and hopefully nobody gets shanghaied and ends up sleeping on the vessel and find themselves out to sea. So the tall ships are going to be racing from New York to Boston. The race starts this coming Thursday, July 9th, which will be an exciting thing. And to give you a little taste of what it's like to race one of these vessels, we covered a race a couple years ago out in the Midwest on the Great Lakes. And so we're going to take a little look at what it's like to be aboard a tall ship when it's racing.
And they're off. In 8 knots of wind, every sail is hoisted for maximum gain. The crew goes aloft to make adjustments. Europa on the left and the Royal Amundsen on the right.
All right, guys, we're over the start. The race is on.
The race is on. The Pride of Baltimore challenges Niagara at close quarters.
There's a problem with the trike.
In a flash, the Pride sails past. The captain looks for a way to gain speed. This is a race. Niagara was built in 1988 as a reconstruction of the warship that Oliver Hazard Perry used to win the Battle of Lake Erie in 1813. The grace and power of these ships under sail provide evidence of sustainable enterprise in the world economy.
I sailed in my teens. I was in a Girl Scout troop that was a sailing troop.
I learned to sail in college on 420s and FJs, raced them all over New England, and then took to tall ship sailing last fall.
It's not bowing up. Actually, don't worry about it. Trim that sheet a little bit.
As the wind changes, the sail plan must be adjusted. It's an ongoing process.
We put up basically every sail we had this morning because the wind was favorable. And then the wind picked up, got too much, we doused them as quickly as possible. And now we're setting them up, taking them down, just testing to see if the rig, if it's suitable for the rig to put these sails up. So depending on how the wind changes, that'll change how we set sail.
What a tight race.
I remember my first time aloft. I laid out onto the lowest yard on the fort. I remember thinking to myself, I will never ever go higher than this because this is terrifying. I don't know why anyone does this. And now I always want to go as high as I can.
I love climbing aloft. I really love going up, even just to reef a sail.
I didn't have too many sailing opportunities because I'm of that age, but these young women have lots of sailing opportunities, and I'm glad to see that they're out taking advantage of it.
Learning through experience is what makes this race so valuable. Navigation is part of the curriculum. And of course, there are 40 meals to prepare 3 times a day.
Grape chicken salad with walnuts, fruit salad, and a regular salad.
Sounds good.
The off-watch spends time below, sleeping.
You know, sailing is an adventure, and it doesn't matter if you're sailing a dinghy, if you're sailing a J-boat, if you're sailing a big square rigger like this.
Steering a straight course is important. Cleanliness is also important.
I love the smell. I love being, you have to be so in the here and now. When you sail a tall ship, you can't be thinking about what's coming tomorrow or what happened yesterday.
As the sun begins to set, Niagara leads Pride of Baltimore by half a mile.
When it comes to terms just who's first and who's second, it's us and Pride neck and neck.
The wind builds and Pride catches up.
Right now, we still have Pride in sight, Pride of Baltimore 2, right here. And that's just abaft our starboard beam, so we're definitely ahead of them in terms of distance traveled, but they're well to windward of us. So if the wind changes like it's supposed to, they'll be well off to that side and can turn down right towards the finish. If the wind stays the way it is now, we're in a pretty good spot.
The crew gets into an efficient groove. Nice.
On the forward, hired, all the way handsomely.
Week number 1. Oh God, what did I get myself into? Why am I doing this? The work is so hard. The rig is so confusing. By the end of week 2, they're saying to themselves, oh, now this is starting to make sense. I know what rise, tacks, and sheets mean. But by week 3, they know the evolutions of tacking. What command is going to come next?
If you give it maybe 2-3 weeks, you'll be surprised at how quickly you can catch on to all this stuff. There's a system. Once you know the system, you're all good.
The ship is a tool. It is a vehicle that can only be operated in one way. Either it works or it doesn't. Either you are going to windward or you are drifting downwind. And if you're going to succeed in getting to windward, getting from point A to point B safely, then you have to learn how it works.
The mission of Niagara is to interpret the War of 1812 and to promote the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
I guess technically we're in the lead. We're doing about a knot faster than Pride of Baltimore right now. Good news is we're going fast. The key is, when is the wind going to come all the way around out of the southwest? Right now it's still well, it's sort of west-southwest right now.
The race continues. Niagara is 198 feet in length. She's built completely of wood. She was designed by Melbourne Smith and built in Erie, Pennsylvania. At sunset, the colors come down. The night watch prepares for an evening under the stars.
The first night sleeping in a hammock, nobody ever gets any sleep. It's so foreign.
Sailing at night is different. Your senses are dull, and of course it's difficult to see. Careful navigation and a sharp lookout are a high priority. Once again, good teamwork is essential. The next morning, sails are adjusted and the watch routine continues. The ship at sea has been described as a microcosm of the planet. Sail training grows from the belief that the sea can challenge a person like no other environment on Earth. The riggers aboard a tall ship are physically, emotionally, and intellectually demanding.
It requires people to be their hardiest and their strongest and their most innovative and most intelligent and alert.
I feel like I came on the brig Niagara just to test myself, to see could I cut it working this hard, and so far I've found that I really love it.
ASTA was founded in 1973 to enrich youth education through experiences aboard tall ships.
I tell my coworkers back in Morgantown that no matter what you pick up, you can bet it's going to be 20 pounds or more. You get used to it.
Niagara nears the finish line. The question is, how are the other boats faring? The boats spread out throughout the night.
Let's see, 3 vessels have finished so far. The Pride of Baltimore 2, followed by the Friends Goodwill, followed by the Lynx. And so now the next 2 vessels closest to the line would be us and Europa.
Let's face it, anytime 2 boats are in sight of each other, you're going to have a race.
Our finish line is straight up to windward here, just a few miles. And Europa right now has a bit of an advantage in that she's further to windward than we are.
Maneuvering a tall ship requires all hands to work in unison. Hey, the race is on. Let's go.
Prepare to come about.
Right about.
Put down the helm.
Anchor the weather. Anchor the weather. Set right up. More topsail, 40 gallon braces. Make
Hard right.
There's great satisfaction aboard Niagara making a smooth maneuver, particularly when the competition is so close. After 170 miles, it's amazing that Niagara and Europa are so close. Seeing the other boat keeps everyone hustling.
A lot easier when you have all hands. You know, it's supposed to have 150 people. So sailing with 40, that's a start.
The bark Europa was built for the city of Hamburg in 1911. She's 185 feet long and was refitted in 1994. Modern technology like GPS and performance instruments are carried on board. But there are traditions from the past that live on.
The Royals,
I
they're
can see the royal from here, yeah.
okay, fire!
Well, they know we're here now.
Finish time, 11:43, 6 seconds.
11:43, 6 seconds. All right, guys, the race is over. We just crossed the finish line.
On corrected time, Niagara is first in their division.
Everybody here has an awesome attitude and they're ready to work, and doing stuff like setting royals is fun and that's great, but it's only fun if there's someone else up there who wants to do it and who has that really enthusiastic attitude.
You've got people coming on and going off, and people coming from all over the country, but everyone just works really hard and works together, and then when you've got a little bit of time to lay around and do what you want, people hang out and they'll play cards or they'll play guitar, or just sit and talk. And I really like the community that can be built here.
It gives you a stronger connection with the ship that you've helped to create and the crew that you're a part of and the captain that you sail for.
I don't know, it's just so cool. Like, we sail the ship the same as we did about 200 years ago. Like, how awesome is that to have as a job?
After a great race and a victory, it's swim call in the beautiful fresh water of Lake Michigan. That water feels good.
I bet that water did feel pretty good after doing that race. You know, they won their class, so that was good. But you get the feeling that the accomplishment is the voyage and getting there. The fact that they may have won or not, I think, was secondary. And you could see the spirit of all those young people being aboard on board the boat. Well, we're lucky today to be joined by recently retired Vice Admiral Dixon Smith. Dixon and I met a lot of years ago. When he was a high school student, I was the coach at the U.S. Naval Academy, their sailing team. And I recognized that this man had a lot of talent. Of course, he was in high school at the time, and sent a letter off, which Dixon reminded me that I'd sent him all those years ago. And he ended up getting himself to the Naval Academy and then had quite a distinguished career in the United States Navy, rising all the way up to be a 3-star admiral, which is quite the achievement. But let me open with this, Dixon. First of all, it's nice to have you here. Have you ever sailed on any of these tall ships?
I have. I had the first, Gary, thanks for having me, and thanks for those kind words. It's great to be back with you again. But yes, I've had the opportunity to sail on HMS Surprise out of San Diego. It was Fleet Week back there, I don't know, many years ago, and was in my whites and got to helm her into San Diego Bay. It was an awesome experience.
And how did this Surprise compare with some of the racing boats you've been on?
A little more complicated, not as fast, but just as much fun.
Well, you were on the sailing team when you were at the Naval Academy, and the lessons you learned on the sailing team, did that help you as a naval officer later on?
Absolutely, it did. Whether it's relative motion or decision making in times of emergency, just being out in the environment and understanding currents and winds, it made a big difference in how I handled my ship and how I grew up throughout the Navy I'm going to sea.
You know, a lot of people understand we have the United States Navy and other organizations like the U.S. Army and the Air Force, but we also have the Coast Guard, which is also maritime organized. But describe for our viewers, what's the difference in the mission between the Coast Guard and the Navy?
Coast Guard is basically rescue and assistance within close to shores, protecting our shores from a commerce perspective primarily, whereas the Navy, we are overseas in defense of our country and of strategic waterways. You just look what's going on with the Strait of Hormuz right now and trying to keep that waterway open. So generally, big picture, Coast Guard close to home, security of our commerce and trade, and then Navy projecting forward.
So I think one of the cool things for me is I have been a resident of Annapolis, Maryland, home of the U.S. Naval Academy for a lot of years. And recently you retired from the Navy and happily moved to Annapolis. So what brought you to Annapolis and what are you doing there today?
Do you want Kiki's answer or my answer?
Kiki's your wife. We'll take your answer, though.
My answer, well, two things. We had two grandsons up in Baltimore, and that's what brought us back to the East Coast and Annapolis. And I also get to be involved with the Navy sailing program at the Academy.
Well, that's admirable. Well, what are you doing with the sailing team at the Academy?
So I volunteered off and on for years with the sailing program there. When I came back, got back and volunteering again, and then a position opened up at the beginning of this year, and I'm now the director of competitive sailing. So I'm responsible to the head coaches and the midshipmen for both the intercollegiate team and the offshore team.
I don't think I could think of a better title in life than being the director of competitive sailing at the U.S. Naval Academy.
It's kind of cool, isn't it?
So the sailing team at the Academy is basically broken up into two different parts. You have the offshore group, and then you have the intercollegiate team, which is kind of the dinghy. And the dinghy tend to be the hot racing sailors and competitive, and the offshore a little bit different. So tell me about the experience level of the offshore sailors versus some of the intercollegiate dinghy sailors.
So we'll start with the intercollegiate first. They carry about 35 folks in the team. Most of them are recruited out of high school. And so this year we've got 6 recruits and another 5 who expressed interest. Coach Burnham, the head coach, is going to give them an opportunity to make the team this fall. But they come in with a lot of racing experience. Offshore team, probably 75, 80% of the team have never sailed before they show up at the Naval Academy.
Wow.
And many of them come from the heartland of America. I mean, they've seen a lake, but they've never seen an ocean. And over the course of the 4 years, they learn how to sail. They learn how to be a part of a crew and work in a small unit team. And before you know it, they're out racing distance races. We've sailed in the Annapolis to Bermuda race this summer. And we also just finished up the Newport Bermuda race. In the Annapolis to Bermuda, the team won. In the Newport Bermuda, they finished 3rd in their class and finished 10th overall in the St. David's Lighthouse. So they learn a lot, and they go away here with a lifelong experience and something they'll do forever.
Well, you'll never forget doing a Newport to Bermuda race or the Annapolis to Newport Bermuda race. So the Naval Academy does not have a tall ship, but you've got a lot of vessels. And some of those vessels, I think you have 16 44-footers that are used for command and seamanship training and also racing. And some of them have been here in New York Harbor.
They have. We have 3 of the Navy 44s up here right now. They happen to be they're berthed over at Kings Point, Long Island right now. But they were over here, and each one of them was assigned a tall ship, and they escorted their assigned tall ship from Verrazano Bridge all the way up to the George Washington Bridge and then back down. Great experience for the midshipmen that are doing that. We've also got 4 Yard Patrol craft, which are basically mini ships, if you will. And we've got 4 of those here, and they've got midshipmen. So they're all out in town and experience in New York, just like all the international boats that are here.
You know, when we're out in the water racing a sailboat or transitioning from one port to another, you're out there usually on the water by yourself. You might see another boat off in the distance, but it's kind of singular being out there. So for these midshipmen, keeping that in mind, you come to New York Harbor, and there's many thousands and thousands of people on vessels and the shoreline and up in buildings, and it must have been gratifying to have people cheering for them as they paraded on July 4th.
Very much so. And I think what happens, they don't necessarily know what they're getting into until it's happening. And I think it's probably one of their first realizations that they're now, having joined the United States Navy, they're a part of something much larger than themselves. And that's kind of a defining moment and their understanding of what service to their country is all about and being a part of a great organization like the Navy.
So I think in the tall ships part of this, there were vessels here from 22 nations. And, you know, a lot of sailors on these vessels and crews and cadets and midshipmen have been touring around the city. Is there any opportunity for the Naval Academy's midshipmen to interface with some of the people from the other vessels?
There are. They're going to the events. They're meeting their counterparts on the ships, the cadets that are crewing those tall ships. And so they get to go and spend time with them, whether it's getting a tour on one of the tall ships or deciding, hey, let's go out and walk the town together. So, and the relationships that they're forming now, they'll continue throughout their careers.
You know, I was at a talk that the superintendent at the Naval Academy gave the Fails Committee and the foundation, and he came in and he said, look, I am 100% behind sailing. I want to support you any way I can, you know, work with you on the budget. If you have a recruit that's pretty special, I'm happy to give a call. And everybody was sitting there at the time going, oh, this is good. And then he said, but I like winning sailboat races. I like being a first of the fleet. And you're in charge of competitive sailing. So what are you doing to help him meet his mission of winning sailboat races and having a competitive team?
The other thing I would add in first is, besides that, he said, if you're happy with second, I'm not interested in supporting. So, no. We're working on recruiting for the intercollegiate team, the dinghy team. We've got a great coaching staff there, but we're working on how can we bring in better blue chips and the top talent in the country.
So a blue chip is?
Blue chip are the top sailing recruits in the country. And so we're competing against the likes of Stanford and Harvard and Brown and Tufts. And so how do we go out and entice them and they understand that Navy's where they want to go? What do you get out of the Naval Academy and attending school there and sailing for Navy that you might not get from another college? And so we're increasing our efforts on recruiting on the intercollegiate side, on the offshore side. In addition to those Navy 44s that you talked about, we also have donated boats. We're looking to increase the number of donated boats we have. And we carry about 70 to 80 members on the offshore team between the junior varsity and the varsity. And by having more donated boats, those midshipmen can get out and compete against higher caliber folks out in these major ocean races and race weeks that we sail in.
You know, one of the attributes, or some of the attributes I have with the midshipmen is they always show up on time. Mm-hmm. Nobody's ever late for practice.
If you're on time, you're late.
If you're on time, you're late. Very good. I was in the Navy for a while myself, and I learned early on it was always better to be a little early than a little late. You never got in trouble being early. You got in trouble being late. But the midshipmen, they're very bright. They're very smart. Many of them, as you point out, are inexperienced with sailing when they got to Annapolis, but they get their experience quite fast. They're physically in great shape, and they have a great attitude. And you put all that together, it develops good sailors, but more importantly, develops really strong naval officers. And we need that today because there's a lot going on in the world. We're living in a very complicated time right now, and the Navy's at the front lines of all of this.
We are. We've all heard the cliche, but it's not a cliche. When a crisis happens somewhere around the world, our commander-in-chief, the first thing he always asks is, or she asks, is, where's the nearest aircraft carrier? We are always forward and standing by to respond to crises should they occur. And to your point of the sailing program and what it develops and instills in our young midshipmen to be future officers in both the United States Navy and the Marine Corps, you couldn't ask for a better group of people to come into the program to do that.
When I did my service in Navy, every deployment I had was on a destroyer, and most of those destroyers were from World War II, which I think are kind of archaic to the equipment and assets that we have today. But when I was at ESPN, we went out and did a report on the Abraham Lincoln, which is a huge aircraft carrier, and I got to do a takeoff and landing on the vessel, which was immensely cool. And I was, overwhelmed and shocked about how big the vessel is and how much is going on there. And that's what you're trying to teach these people, to be able to handle that. And you rose up in the Navy to get in charge of a lot of people. How do you be able to absorb that? Is it a year-by-year thing you grow into the position, or how do you do that?
It's a year-by thing that you grow into it. One of the things, and you don't realize when it's happening, but the Navy, but I'll say all the services, has this way of teaching you and ensuring you know what you need to know before you get to the next step. And so when I, was fortunate enough to command an Arleigh Burke destroyer, that was the first time I ever commanded an Arleigh Burke destroyer, but I had been taught and I had learned the things I needed to do to successfully deploy that and take that overseas. And whether it's a destroyer or a cruiser or an aircraft carrier or a platoon or a company, on the Marine Corps side, we learn as we go. We've got great mentors, and we learn from some of the best to be able to do our job when we're called and it's our turn.
So training and education never stops?
Never stops. Never. I'm still learning.
Yeah, we all are. Every time I think I have all the answers, I quickly realize I don't, and you got to keep learning on. So how long do you think you'll be at the Naval Academy, and what is on your laundry list of things you want to do in the sport of sailing?
In the sport of sailing, I wanted to get into team racing. I've not really done that. 3-on-3, 2-on-2, whatever it is. But I don't know much. I want to get into that personally. For the Naval Academy, I'd like to see a new sailing center built next to the existing one. It's getting tired. I'd like to get our donated program back where it needs to be able to get our offshore team out competing against the best in the country. And on the dinghy team, I want to start winning national titles again.
Very good. Well, team racing's great fun, but you got to be a good mathematician because the scores are constantly changing. It's only 3 boats against 3 boats, but you got to work hard. So I hope you get to do that. Well, Dixon, thank you very much for being with us here today. I understand you have an interesting black tie dinner at the New York Yacht Club with a lot of military people called a mess dinner tonight, which is very exciting. And Dixon's going to be one of the speakers at that dinner, so I look forward to your words there. So we're going to move on here and meet one of the ships that have been in the harbor here for the past few days. The Innis Sudarshini is from India. It's a 177-foot-long 3-masted bark, and it's from India. That's a long way from New York Harbor. And the name of this boat means Beautiful Lady Sundari, after the half-sister of Buddha. So what could be bigger than that for somebody from India? So with that, let's take a look.
In 2012, India's vessel, the Sudarshini, was launched. This was a year that would see the premiere of the Hunger Games, as well as Gangnam Style becoming popular on YouTube with over 1 billion views. Sadly, we also have mass shootings happening at a movie theater in Aurora, Colorado, as well as at the elementary school in Sandy Hook, Connecticut. 2012 was also the year of what was supposed to be the Mayan apocalypse. This was a belief that ancient calendars would predict the end of the world happening on December 21st, 2012. It was a phenomenon that misinterpreted the ancient Mesoamerican long count calendar. When December 21st rolled by, the calendar simply restarted. In late October of 2012, we also have Superstorm Sandy hitting. It first hit the Caribbean and then worked its way up the mid-Atlantic area, ravaging parts of the United States. It was the largest Atlantic hurricane on record at that time as measured by diameter, with tropical storm force winds spanning over 1,150 miles.
So I'm Commander Ravikant Nanduri. I am the commanding officer of Indian Naval Sail Training Ship Sudarshini. My ship's name Sudarshini. It has two different meanings. It is taken from the word Sundari, which is a Hindi word which means a beautiful maiden of the seas, and also an offshoot from Sudarshana. She was the stepsister of Gautam Buddha. She was a proponent of peace and tranquility. So that is what we wanted to bring to our ship by naming her after a person who believes in peace and also a beautiful maiden of the seas, because when you see my ship at sea in all her glory when all the sails are set, she is a beautiful sight to behold. We started on the 20th of Jan from a place called Cochin, Kerala, which is on the southwest coast of India, and we have traveled almost 5 months to reach the shores of the United States. And on our journey we have already crossed over 13,000 miles, touching 9 different countries before coming to the United States. So as you might have seen the other vessels from the foreign countries and the foreign navies which have visited this port, you would see that we are one of the smallest compared to the others in terms of size, length or even height. And we are the only vessel which has travelled from across the Indian Ocean. Rest of the vessels have come either from the Mediterranean or the Atlantic. So that makes us the only vessel which has travelled the farthest and the longest in terms of distance, the duration and the geographical location. We have been through the Indian Ocean, the Arabian Sea, that's where we started from, then through the Gulf of Aden. From there we have crossed the Red Sea, the Mediterranean, the Atlantic. En route we have crossed the Cyprus Sea. We are going to cross the North Mediterranean as well. And so that makes us crossing about 4 different water bodies which are the largest on this world. For my crew, this mission which we are on is called Lokayan. Traditionally, it can be divided into 2 parts. Lok means world and Yan means travel. Traveling about 22,000 nautical miles across 13 different countries. So for my crew to have reached all the way across 4 different oceans, traveling 13,000 miles and reaching the shores of the United States, it is a validation of all the hard work and drive that they have put in. And it's a very good message for them as well, that even if you are small, even if you are not the biggest vessel in this world, you are the toughest and the meanest by traveling so far. For us, we are a sail training vessel, the heart of the ship is the bridge where the entire command and control of the ship happens. The position that you see me right now is the steering post where the helmsman of the ship, he steers the ship through and through. So once the sails are set or when the machinery is in place, he is the one who has the ship under his control. This wheel is about 50 years old. And it has a beautiful history of having served in multiple ships of the Indian origin on a wooden sailboat as well earlier. In this ship, unlike the other ships that you have visited, we do not have an enclosed bridge. It is not covered on all sides through plexiglass or metal windows. We have open windows and an open bridge concept so that the officer or the cadets who are standing a watch in this bridge, they can have the feel of the wind from all 4 directions, and they can understand whenever the wind changes its direction or its intensity, immediately the officer of the watch feels it and he maneuvers the ship accordingly to get the best possible wins in the sails. We want to teach the cadets not to rely purely on the machinery or the instrumentation, but to understand that nature, when utilized correctly, she can help you to reach from a place to place without any concerns. Currently we are on top of the bridge where an officer of the watch, he or she stands a watch during her day at sea. They are the one who are responsible for the entire conduct of the vessel. The officer is responsible for the duration of their duty of the 4 hours, for the entire ship's evolutions, the ship's safety, the personnel safety, and the success of a particular mission or an evolution during the period. This position gives them a complete overview on a 360-degree scale all around the ship, where they can have an uninterrupted view of what's going around the ship. With me right now we have got Sub-Lieutenant Ria. She has just joined on board the ship today. She's an under-trainee from the Indian Naval Academy who will be training with us during her course of 6 months in the first training squadron.
At the academy we've been taught about all the theoretical parts, but here we're going to actually see what the seafarers face, what all opportunities we get, what all challenges we have to face, what all things we have to do and inculcate in ourselves to be the leaders tomorrow, because we will be the leaders, we will be sailing a ship, we will be commanding people under us.
Anyone, honestly anyone who steps on this ship, they are on Indian soil. So once they are on Indian soil, what we want them to take back from this experience when they come on this ship is the spirit of world as one family. We believe in the concept of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which means world is one big family. We do not believe in borders. The land divides people, the land divides countries. The oceans do not. The oceans actually unite everyone. We are on a diplomatic mission. We are trying to bridge the gaps that were encroached or trying to strengthen the bonds that we have with our friendly nations. India and US share a very good bonhomie and a very good relationship. For us to be invited to take part in the 250 years of independence of the United States, which is a historic moment in itself, that in fact gives a validation to the strengthening ties that India and United States have.
Oh, you've got to feel good that the crew of the Sudarsini feels good being here all the way from India. That is a long supply line getting to New York Harbor from India. And I like the young woman that's an officer on the vessel, and you could tell her passion and importance of learning from sail training to becoming an officer in the Indian Navy. Very strong. Well, speaking of women, Dr. Tara Ryder, we got to talk to the other day, and she's a historian, got her PhD. She's a professor at Stony Brook University and a real aficionado of all things maritime, tall ships. She served in the United States Coast Guard for 9 years, and I had a great time sitting down, and we're going to hear some more from Tara. So with that, let's turn to Dr. Tara Ryder. Gary Jobson, welcome to Sailforth 250. What a great event, and who doesn't love a birthday party, particularly a 250th birthday party? We're joined today here by a real expert on maritime history, Dr. Tara Ryder. She's a professor at Stony Brook University out on the end of Long Island, served in the United States Coast Guard, loves everything maritime, and I must guess she must have loved going to school with getting a PhD. You know, we look at these ships that are touring the harbor and going up and down, and they look beautiful and they look romantic. But even in the early days, there was a lot of science behind these boats because they wanted to survive, they wanted to get their mission done, and they wanted to get back. So there must have been a lot of interesting people building and designing these ships so that the sailors could be able to handle them.
You really have to think about just how many different moving parts there were to a vessel successfully going out to sea, from the designers, the builders, to iron workers for all of the nails that were needed, sail makers, rope makers, coopers for all of the barrels to carry all of the supplies, and then also simply gathering a crew to be able to go out on these voyages. And again, early on, if you go back, you know, this was a world that was dangerous. And so the question of who was going to return, would that vessel make it?
So you had to have crew that were skilled at being at sea, but a lot of them were probably pretty new to it.
So this is where you get the term green hands. That's often coming from the fact that these were landlubbers going out to sea for the first time, and they might turn a little green. But there's also just the years that it takes to have experience. So you had ordinary seamen kind of above the green hands, and then an able-bodied seaman was the most important sailor on board. They were the ones who knew every part of that vessel. They knew where that line went, and before a captain could really even finish an order, they were already putting it into place. And then, of course, you had all of your officers.
So being a leader was hard work. You had to get everybody working for you. Discipline was important, yet you didn't want to be overbearing. We've all seen the film Mutiny on the Bounty, and we know Captain Bligh, and there's a lot of trauma that happened out at sea. But I'm guessing it probably wasn't like that. It must have been more of a community or brotherhood, or was it really separated between the officers and the people working the deck?
First of all, it depended very much on the vessel itself. Each vessel had, to a certain degree, its own personality, and that included kind of what that very homogenous society looked like. You are looking at an all-male crew for the most part. Most of them would have been young men. If we think about sailors going back to the 1400s, even into the 1800s, this is a physically demanding job. And so typically you'd be in your 20s, 30s, you're going to age out at a certain point. But again, you often depended on, in the navies, there was a lot more structure. It was a lot more, we could argue, brutal. But on merchant vessels, it really was a matter of kind of the captain's attitude. So you had some that we would see as much more comrades working together, others in which you have that very strict hierarchy going on. And it really came down to survival, what was going to work best.
I've been across the Atlantic Ocean 6 times on vessels, and every time I've done it, it seems to take about 14 to 17 days, whether I'm on a sailing vessel or a merchant vessel. How long were these boats out there at sea?
So crossing over, if you were going from Europe to the Americas in, say, the 1500s, 1600s, you were looking at anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks to even longer, depending on the weather. So you're out there for months at a time. And so again, you have to think about, as large as these vessels look, how small they really were when you think about the amount of space you have to move during that time frame.
It's fascinating reading ship's logs. People have very intricate handwriting, but they put a lot in the ship's logs and told you what's going on. And importantly, they told us what life was like aboard these boats. And it seemed like these ships had a very different personality, and it all started with the captain.
The captain very much kind of set the tone for what this vessel was going to be like. And so some of them were incredibly strict, very, very conscientious about that idea of hierarchy. Officers were not mixing with the typical sailor. Others, it depended a little bit more, maybe a little bit more flexibility. Typically, if there was a smaller crew, you might have a closer working relationship. Probably the ones where we see the most structure was coming out of the Navy. And again, this is where we hear about mutinies, we hear about floggings going on. So again, we do have to recognize this was a very restricted society. And what happened at sea really had no authority to be challenged other than by going to the captain. So if the captain orders you to be flogged, it's not until you get back to shore that you could challenge that.
There's an expression that sounds horrifying to me, somebody being keel-hauled. What was that all about? So
keel-hauled is the idea that you would basically be thrown under and kind of brought around and underneath the vessel. And if you think about these wooden boats, you would have had barnacles on them, so you can imagine the scrapings. It was not a particularly common practice. You were more likely to be flogged, and this is where you get the cat o' nines, which means every time I flogged you, you actually got hit 9 times. And so it was a brutal kind of punishment, but it was also done, when we think about it, as peer pressure. The idea of that one person being done to keep order. So again, it's a very rigid kind of structure that you are seeing on many, many of these vessels historically.
Hence, we had a few mutinies along the way.
definitely. We definitely have mutinies. Probably the most famous that people are aware of is Mutiny on the Bounty. But again, we see these happening. This is where you see people being left behind on an island because they had mutinied. Some of the mutinies are successful, many of them are not, but it really kind of highlights that tension that's playing out between the crew, the officers, often the captain, who is not only in charge of the vessel, but he's often the representative for the owners. So there's a competition over, safety of the vessel, safety of your crew, and how much you can make. How fast can you get to a port? How fast can you get back to your home port?
So I've been on a lot of sailboats over the years, and whether I'm racing or not racing, if there's another boat near me, I want to sail faster. It's just human nature that you want to sail the boat as fast as you can. And I'm sure in these merchant vessels, and certainly the naval vessels, they wanted to perform and get their boat sailing faster than any boats that are in the area. Maybe they wanted to catch somebody, maybe they wanted to outrun them. So sailing the boat well had to be an important priority.
Definitely the skill level was quite critical, and what you see on these vessels is kind of different levels of skill. So at the very bottom would be your green hands. These are what we might call the landlubbers who have decided to go to sea, and they literally turn green because of that rocking world. But they're the ones who are just figuring out which way is port, which way is starboard. All of the different lines. When you look at these vessels, there are literally hundreds of lines that they have to know. Above them are the ordinary seamen, and this is going to be a role that sailors are in for years at a time. And this is where they have a little bit more than just the really basic knowledge, but they're working up to it. The most important sailors, though, were what we call the able-bodied seamen. These were the ones who knew literally everything about that vessel. They knew as soon as an order was given, or even as it was being given, what needed to be done. And that's what made those vessels successful, was the able-bodied seamen.
So the term green, people turn green when they get seasick, and I will tell you, I've sailed with a lot of great America's Cup champions, Olympic medalists. Everybody gets seasick at some point. Nobody is immune to doing that. But once you're out at sea for a while, you get over it. 2 or 3 days in, you're doing well, and I'm sure that's what happened there. So there's a lot of stories. You read Jack London and others about sailors that basically came up through the hawse pipe, I think the expression is, where they didn't know anything and they were green, and eventually become able-bodied seamen or mates or even captains.
Definitely, and again, there was lots of home remedies. So ginger was very, very popular. So this is the idea of ginger snaps, because if you keep ginger snaps in a sealed tin, they never go bad. And so a captain's wife would maybe give him a tin, and he could then sell it to the green hands, and it would be a way to make a little extra money on it. But it took years of learning to become an able-bodied seaman, and this is one of the kind of struggles there, because you need those years of experience, but this is also really physically demanding work. So the older you get, the more physically tough this is, and so you kind of see sailors capping out at the top end of their salary right in their early to mid-30s, because by then they have the skill, but physically they're starting to kind of get a little worn down on it. So there's a push and pull throughout this whole world.
And people didn't live that long during that era either. If you were in your 40s, you were old. Now in your 40s, you're just almost getting rolling. At least I certainly hope so. Well, I have to think that it all heightened up when you had a battle. Another ship came along, and you're in the Royal Navy, the British, and oh my gosh, over the horizon comes a French vessel, and do we engage or not? And it must have gotten really serious at that point.
It is, and it's something to keep in mind, the question of, are you actively at war? Because this is the difference between it being a fair interaction and the question of, is this piracy? This is also the question of privateering, which was legalized piracy, which was a little questionable at times. But it's also, the idea that you have to have absolute command, and this is why the captain was so important. He's important during all of these periods, but especially in times of conflict and during bad weather. You need one person who is making these decisions, and it can't be kind of opened up to a democratic debate of what should we do next.
Well, you use that term weather. You know, sailing when it's blowing 12 or 14 miles an hour, nautical miles an hour, and the sun's shining and it's warm out, you couldn't have more delightful sport than sailing. But it's not always like that out there. Storms blow through and big waves happen, and then equipment breaks, and then people get injured and tired, and it can be tough out there at sea. So the question is, how do these sailors handle it when the weather turns adverse?
You know, they've got to keep doing their job. And this is one of the things to keep in mind is they don't get to go, okay, we're going to take a little bit of a break and go inside. So you're going to continue to be climbing up, you know, the mast. You're going to have to think about, do you need to bring the sail in? And, you know, bringing the sail in means you're going to lose a little bit of that speed. So it's, again, a give and take between the safety of the vessel and the crew and the necessary speed for that particular moment. Sometimes we also have to think about they're going to pray to the gods. Over, you know, do we need more wind? Do we need less wind? So this was the idea of like throwing money at the sails if you are becalmed because you wanted to give the gods a little bit of their due, but don't give them too much because then you end up with a hurricane. So it's also a very superstitious world that comes out of this.
I think a sailor's worst nightmare is being becalmed, sitting there in no wind. You can't go anywhere. You're searching the horizon and clouds for anything. And people don't like it. And there's a band, a part of the earth called the doldrums, that between the northern and southern hemisphere where there's no wind at all. And it's hard to get through there.
And this was definitely the challenges, especially as we're seeing trade expanding, as you're getting into what's known as the age of exploration, which is 1400s, 1500s, going all the way into the early 1900s. But in this world of sail, getting becalmed could mean that you were going to run out of food, you were going to run out of water. It also meant you may get back and find out that there's no one to buy that cargo. Morale is going to be very tough. So again, this may lead more likely to mutinies, and we definitely do see mutinies happening in the doldrums because there's that tension of, are we going to survive?
I was doing the America's Cup out in San Diego, and San Diego is generally not a windy place. You know, 8 to 12 knots is an average day. A big wind day might be 14 or 15 knots. And while covering it, I thought, you know, I want to do a documentary on the windiest part of the world. What is the windiest part of the world? And after a little bit of research, I figured it out. Cabo de Hornos, Cape Horn, at the bottom of South America. And this is where the Andes Mountains, which are roughly 18,000 feet high, these lows whip around the world, unimpeded by land. They can't get over the top of the mountain because the air is so thin, and they go around the bottom of Cape Horn, and it blows gale force winds one day out of every 4. And the stories are amazing of boats trying to navigate around the Horn and get from New York to San Francisco, and it must have been really tough. The stories about boats that spend weeks just trying to round the Horn because it was so windy.
I mean, this is definitely part of what you hear when you think back to like the mid-19th century and the gold rush, because the fastest way to get from the East Coast to the West Coast was by water. But you had to also go through this incredibly dangerous area. And so, you know, the question of not just how long was it going to take, but were you actually going to make it around successfully? And so, again, that fight against Mother Nature is part of that story.
Well, I've been around Cape Horn 3 times, and it was windy, but not grossly windy. It was 25 to 30 knots, so it was a fresh breeze, but it wasn't debilitating. And after doing that documentary, I thought, you know, maybe I could do something else. What could be more dramatic than Cape Horn? And I came up with Antarctica. And spent 6 weeks sailing the Antarctic Peninsula on a sailboat, a 54-foot sailboat, and it was fascinating to be down there. And you really got the sense of what New York looked like and what North America looked like, shaped by the glaciers, because that's what they have down there. And you could see it. You know, the harbor right behind us here, that was all formed by glaciers. And not that long ago on the geological clock, only maybe 10,000 years ago, there were glaciers here.
Yeah, I was about to say, if you think about it, Long Island is very much made up from the glaciers. We only became an island literally an eye blink ago, 11,000 years ago.
And terminal moraine.
Yeah, those glaciers that left Long Island roughly about 22,000 years ago very much shaped not only the island, but they flattened out like the Long Island Sound area and really kind of helped to shape it. And if you think about it, Long Island is also the remnants of the Appalachian Mountains. So we've definitely got a lot of geological history in this area.
I find glaciers fascinating, and the thing that surprised me in Antarctica is how loud these are. It's like thunder going off and fireworks are cracking and exploding and all this noise going on. It's really something, and they're moving. I mean, they're basically gigantic rivers of ice that are going into the sea. And of course, the question now, are they melting faster than we want them to be?
I mean, this is definitely quite literally a hot question, but climate change is part of what we have to think about when thinking about this maritime world, and the fact that here in New York, as well as in many other parts of the world, we are coastal areas. We have, as humans, historically lived near coastal zones because of all of the benefits, whether we're thinking about food, like shellfish and fishing, but also transportation. Historically, it's always been easier to move goods and people over the water. And so, again, we have this very close connection to the water, even though we can't live in it.
I've done a lot of ocean racing, and when you do ocean racing long distance, you spend 4 hours on deck sailing the boat and 4 hours down below resting, eating, and preparing for the next time. And life down below, it's not always that nice. It's wet and sometimes uncomfortable, and it's loud. So I imagine life aboard these vessels wasn't so pleasant.
Absolutely not. First of all, it tends to be really damp. One of the first things I was told is that wooden vessels are always in the process of sinking because there's just no way to get the wood close enough. So you've got a dampness that is innate to these vessels. You also have to think about the size of the crew, and this really depends on what type of vessel it is. On a fishing vessel or on a merchant vessel, you want to have as small of a crew as possible because this all comes down to economics. And so that also means you want as few officers as possible because it's basically one officer per watch. But on naval vessels, as well as on pirate vessels, it's all about having a large complement because the sailing is kind of secondary in that sense. You want to have as many people as possible when you have conflict. And so, again, there's kind of a different setup depending on the type of vessel it is. But always it's going to be tight because on a cargo vessel, you want to give as little room to the sailors as possible and leave everything else open to make money. And then on the naval vessels, there's just so many people. So your bunk is probably likely to be shared. So when you're on watch, someone is sleeping in your bunk at that time. So hopefully you are not getting any of the lovely, little bugs.
Well, it's like that in ocean racers. If you're on watch for 4 hours, somebody's in your bunk, and you want to make sure that you keep it dry for that person. Don't get in with your wet foul weather gear because the next person's going to have a wet bunk, and then the morale starts to go down at that point. But what about the food on these vessels? I mean, we talk about scurvy. People like to eat fruit as best they could. I mean, food must have been a big issue.
Food was definitely an issue, and if we think about it today, food is very tightly wrapped around with morale when we think about it, but that was not going to be a morale builder on most vessels, especially those vessels that are at sea for long periods of time, so transatlantic vessels, ones that are going over to Asia for trade. So you had a lot of salted meats. You also had a lot of what's known as hardtack. Basically take flour and water and maybe a little salt, mix it together, bake it, and then bake it a second time, and it was meant to be gnawed on. It wasn't something you ate in one sitting. You could either use it to dip into like some soup, or you'd kind of gnaw a piece off and stick it in your pocket. It did sometimes have a little extra protein added in it. You had weevils. So again, it's not necessarily the healthiest of food. Now, as a captain, you would be living, hopefully, a much better kind of quality of food. Officers, especially on naval vessels, you might even have a couple of chickens and a pig on board to provide some fresh food. But that's why coming into a port was so important, because you could get fresh food. On smaller vessels or ones that were going more slowly for whatever reason, they may have some fishing going on. But again, this was not a life that was for everyone. Sailors were definitely, if we look at society, we're at the bottom of the socioeconomic scale, and this was not a huge draw to say, hey, look at our food on board.
Wow. Well, I would like to be having dinner with the captain and not with the rest of the sailors down below. That would be a tough one. So I'm guessing that every now and then there would be some kind of illness that would come along that would go through the ship. I mean, somebody gets a cold on the train and you're sitting next to them and you get the cold, or on the airplane. So illness and not seasickness, but it must have been some debilitating moments on the board. What did they do?
Diseases definitely ran rampant because you are in that really kind of tight environment. Everyone is interacting with each other. You don't have great quality food. You're not necessarily living a good quality life of getting 8 hours of sleep every night. So typically the captain would often be the medic on board, and he might have kind of his pharmacy that he would have. We have examples of these if you go to various maritime museums, and they might have something like some cocaine in there. They also had mercury, so some really wonderful solutions. So sometimes the treatment was worse than the illness itself. You also have to recognize not only do you have sailors on board many of these vessels, you also have passengers on board. So again, you have a lot of interaction. Plus, as they're going in and out of ports, they're getting exposed to diseases that they don't have any type of protection against.
Wow. I hadn't thought about that, but you show up in a part of the world and you don't have the immune system, which, you might be naturalized where you live, but now you're in a place and you got sick. That must have happened a lot.
It did, and it is something to recognize that it was not unusual for a sailor to die at sea, whether it was from disease or from injury. This was simply a part of life, and historically, sailors were one of the most dangerous professions you could be in for any number of reasons, including simply exposure to illness.
Well, I've read stories about you'll have a group out on the bowsprit, and a gigantic wave comes and just gets rid of 8 people that were on the bowsprit, and they don't go back.
You would have people washed away. You could be out on the bowsprit, or if you're on a whaling ship in the 19th century, you'd be dealing with sharks, so you might lose a limb. In that case, the most important person on board was actually the cook, because he was good with the knives. And you wanted someone who could slice very quickly and also then cauterize the burn. It is also something to recognize if any of you are familiar with Treasure Island, and if you think about what that main character's role was, he was a cook because he had no leg. And so a lot of cooks ended up being sailors who had lost a leg at sea. It was a way, kind of, if we think about it, early workman's comp.
Oh, Captain Hook, right?
You have Captain Hook, you have Long John Silver from Treasure Island, and again, they often played certain roles.
Well, I think one of the most compelling stories that I've read over the years is Ernest Shackleton. He took an expedition down to the Antarctic Peninsula, got stuck in the ice, and they spent a long time down there, and it was unbelievable rescue, and he got everybody back.
I mean, that is actually really miraculous, between just the environment being so dangerous, the idea of, the ice breaking, not being able to necessarily predict what the ice was doing, to the fact of the lack of food, the lack of quality of food, that you're going to get everyone surviving that trip. And there are so many incredible stories of survival, but they're also then kind of seen as oppositional to how many deaths occurred as well.
Well, I think one of the intriguing things about the Shackleton story, he had a photographer on the boat, I think his name was Hurley, and he came back with these glass plates, these negatives, and these black and white photos so we could see them today. I mean, it's astounding.
It is amazing how much we have, and how, especially from, say, the 19th century going forward, how many artifacts there are. If you go up to like Mystic Seaport, that is our largest collection in North America. And they've made a point of kind of having all of these kind of bits and pieces and thinking about where is that story, whether it's the picture, the logbook like you talked about, the outfit that the whalers wore so that they would be seen. They even had sunglasses to protect themselves from that reflection. But it makes it much more real when you have those tangible objects.
Well, I highly recommend people go visit Mystic Seaport. There's so much. You can spend a couple days there with things. They commissioned me a few years ago to do a film on a couple named Irving and Electa Johnson, who had two boats named the Yankee and they did 7 trips around the world with young people, ages 16 to 24. And they had some colorful people. Sterling Hayden, who we saw in The Grandfather, an actor, was the maid on the boat. And happily, they had cameramen filming movies, 8mm, of all 7 trips. So I made a film on the voyages of Irving and Electa Johnson, which is, I think you can probably find it on the internet, called Unfurling the World. Anyway, that is all found at Mystic Seaport. I could listen to Dr. Ryder for a long time. She's just full of history. It's fascinating to be part of it. Well, we're joined by a very special guest. Chris O'Brien is the chief executive of Sailforth 250 and has been working hard for the past 6 years to pull this off together. Now it's July 6th, 2 days after the momentous day of July 4th, and it's great to have you here, Chris. Thank you very much.
Great to be here.
Chris served in the United States Coast Guard, a graduate, proud graduate of the U.S. Coast Guard Academy. And Ayo Haynes is down on the Intrepid, and she's been following this from the waterfront the past 3 days. And Ayo, we have Chris O'Brien here, and I wonder if you, Chris, have any questions that you'd like to Ayo about what she's seen over the past few days.
Yeah. Hey, good morning. Actually, it's afternoon. It's afternoon already here in New York. You know, we're hearing so much about the positive energy that is all around these international ships. What are you picking up from on the ground, you know, with the positive energy, kind of that international goodwill part?
Hey, Chris, first of all, amazing job in putting this all together. Kudos to you. Hats off. I mean, this must not have been an easy task, and I'm sure it's taken you all the entire year to put this incredible effort together. I am just beyond excited to be a part of it.
Yeah, well, it was a little more than 6 years to put this together, but here we are. You know, I've been hearing so much about from the ships and the captains how amazing the experience was and how much it meant just to be here on the 4th. What are you picking up from the crew?
Well, you know what? It's so great is that even though it's starting to rain a little harder, people are still here. They're still coming out. They are so excited, and they realize that this is a once-in-a-lifetime event. And to be able to physically walk on board a tall ship that they see on TV or might represent something like a pirate ship, they get to be on it right themselves with the sailors and see the masts and the huge sails and the ropes and the rigging and all of it. So as we saw throughout the packages that we put together, families are coming, friends are coming, and sailors are coming with their families and wanting to make this an experience that they can share with their kids. And by the way, a lot of people have canceled reservations because of the rain, which means that there's more opportunities for those people who thought, maybe I'll stay at home. Come on down. This is the time. They actually have passes available to get on the ships. We have our pass, as you see here. This gets us on the Intrepid Pier. You have a beautiful brochure that they put together with daily events. And obviously, tomorrow is the last day. This is something that you want to make sure you come before 3 p.m. because 3 p.m. tomorrow is the last tour. Or else you're going to have to go up to Boston to see it, right? But the energy is electric. The feeling is electric. People are just incredibly happy to be here and to be a part of this once-in-a-lifetime celebration.
Thank you very much, Ayo. Chris, over the past 3 days, have you got any sense of how many spectators there were up in the buildings, on the water, from various boats on the shoreline, Governor's Island, where you were. What do you think the audience size was?
Yeah, well, the New York Post said millions, and there's that famous headline from the bicentennial 1976 6 million view Operation Sail, our predecessor. But the sense was people came out really excited to be part of this, to take this moment in on America's 250th birthday. Where I was, down on Governor's Island, we were a little bit insulated there, and so we didn't get to see the crowds. But I kept wondering, what it was like, and then so it was really nice to see it there, right in the papers that millions of people did come out.
Well, I think in addition to people that were here, a lot of people got to see this. I mean, what I could see, the NBC's coverage was absolutely phenomenal, and I think they had something like 50 cameras, count them, 50 cameras all around the waterfront, and of course, the best of their commentators describing what was going on. Do you know what kind of audience they had at NBC?
We haven't gotten the data yet, but I'm very anxious to hear. But it was an unprecedented national broadcast. So the Today Show broadcast for 6 hours straight, and the feedback I've gotten from family and friends and others around the country, and just random messages on our socials, that it was just incredibly well received.
Well, I think it's fair to say things are pretty hot in New York at the present time. For example, the Knickerbockers won the NBA. Very cool. Mm-hmm. You had a big wedding at Madison Square Garden over the weekend.
That's right.
Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce.
There was a rumor that she was actually going to have the wedding on a tall ship, because any captain can marry, a couple.
Oh, that's a good rumor, but I don't think it happened that way. Which may get, well, you could have done that too. So, putting something like this together just seems daunting to me. And as you pointed out, you worked on it for 6 years, a long time. What kind of budget is there to put something like this together?
Yeah, well, we worked on trying to develop what we think the costs are going to be for this, for those about the first year and a half, and it was really unpredictable. Once we started learning how much work had to be done just to create the infrastructure for the ships to safely dock. And once we kind of had a better understanding of that, my budget was about $25 million, and we did a pretty good job of getting close to that. But we had some partners that came in here in New York City, came in and helped us with some of that infrastructure work to kind of get us over the finish line. And so we were just really thankful for all the partners that really pitched in. The tugboat companies, McAllister Towing, the Sandy Hook pilots, all those things that nobody would really think that comes into this, that actually are quite an expense, really coming on and supporting us.
Well, I think in addition to that, we have to have generated a lot of goodwill with ships from at least 22 countries that I know about, and people from around the world coming to New York.
Yeah, well, that's right. So so our event was, of course, the Tall Ship Parade, which is the International Goodwill Celebration. But our sister event with the U.S. Navy was the International Naval Review and the International Aerial Review. And so between these three events that came together on July 4th, we figured there were 46 nations represented, all wanting to be here to be part of this spectacular moment, this milestone for the nation. The goodwill that comes out of this, I don't think you can calculate it.
Well, having walked around the streets of Manhattan here for the past few days, you see a lot of people in uniform, a lot of naval-type uniforms, sailor outfits, etc. And I've got to think that these crews on these vessels got to know each other.
Well, that's true. They've come together now to know each other. But, we're learning every day about all of the crew exchanges that have been happening from port to port as the ships have been working their way up from New Orleans. You remember, the ship started in New Orleans, went to Norfolk, to Baltimore, then they came here, and now they're going to Boston. And so all that time, there have been official crew exchanges. And so crew members from the Italian ship are going onto the Argentinian ship and vice versa. And it's been really amazing to see that interaction, building those relationships, those bonds between the official allied nations that sent their vessels, just like inspiring.
Well, they're all going to Boston, and I guess we have a race or some kind of cruising company. Tell me how that's going to go, and when does it all start?
There are 4 sister ships that that are built to the same specifications.
And the Eagle is one of them?
The Eagle, the Coast Guard tall ship Eagle is one of them. The Portuguese tall ship Sagres is one. The German tall ship Gorchfock is one. And the Romanian tall ship Mircea is the other. So they make up the 4 ships. The remaining sister ships, they haven't met in one place since 1976, since the bicentennial.
Wow.
And at that time, there was a gathering in Bermuda of all the ships coming for America's bicentennial, and there was a race. And the ships raced from Bermuda to Newport.
Who won?
Germany won. And Germany has had the cup. It's a Tiffany's cup. It's beautiful. Germany has had the cup for these 50 years. We got them together. We're kicking off the race again. They're going to leave New York. There's a special course that we're going to finalize tomorrow morning. They're going to race to Boston, and then we'll award the cup in Boston.
So they go to the south coast of Long Island, past Block Island, Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket, around Cape Cod, and into Boston Harbor.
That's right. That's right. And so it'll be a timed race, and so it's kind of a start line, finish line, a time with a timed, kind of winner, and everyone is so excited. And it's funny, actually, my daughter sailed on the German tall ship crossing the Atlantic. Oh. And the German captain said, Chris, we're not going to go easy on Laura, my daughter. We're going to make her a sailor just like anybody else. And so she showed up on the ship. They issued her uniform. One difference, there was a little U.S. flag on her arm. And she slept in hammocks on the ship. She climbed the rigging. She pulled sheets, and she took watches, and she had this amazing experience, 20 days crossing the Atlantic.
And how old is your daughter?
She's 23. And it's those kinds of experiences where they've built all this camaraderie, and there's been a lot of exchange between the ships. So it's a very much a positive moment for these 4 ships. And so there's a little bit of competition, but they're not taking it too seriously. It's the international goodwill part that they're really trying to play.
Well, I have a feeling they'll be taking it seriously when they get the sails up and going, and nobody wants to go slower than the other boat. Yeah. And if I'm allowed to cheer for a boat, I'm going to cheer for the Eagle. Yeah. Yeah. You were on the Eagle when you were at the Academy?
Well, actually, I was on the Eagle in 1992. My Coast Guard career started at the Officers Candidate School in Yorktown, Virginia, and then I got stationed on Governor's Island, and it was the luckiest thing that ever happened. I found myself in this perfect situation as the Admiral's aide, and the ships were coming in for the Columbus 500 event on July 4th in 1992, and so I got to be on the Eagle as the liaison officer, and so there I am on the ship with my little phone to call just in case something happens. And we're passing Governor's Island in the grand parade. And, of course, Eagle always leads the parade. It's America's tall ship. And we're passing Governor's Island and the phone rings.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, boy, what's going on? And so I answer the phone. On the other end is a booming voice. This is Walter Cronkite. And so from that moment on, I was hooked. And it was just such a moment. And I plan to get underway on board Eagle for a real sail after this event. I've been talking to Captain Chris Hensley about it, and so we're gonna make that happen.
Going back here a second, what did Walter Cronkite have to say?
He wanted to know what our perspective was on the water. We're just passing the Statue of Liberty. The fireboat's just ahead of us, this incredible moment, marking the 500 years of Columbus here coming to America. And so he wanted to know what the sense was and what the feeling was. And I think one of the really interesting takeaways I've gotten, which is not surprising at all, is every one of the sailors, even the junior sailors, are coming up to me. I've never felt anything like it. Sailing into New York Harbor on such a moment, but coming up to passing that Statue of Liberty, seeing the Battery, the foot of Manhattan there, sailing into this historic port on a historic day.
I can just hear Walter Cronkite. This is Walter Cronkite.
Yeah.
And that's the way it is here on the board the Eagle. Pretty special. So you had some pretty big name, important people on Governor's Island with you. My wife was there, so thank you for hosting her. Mm-hmm. And she got to meet Governor Hochul from New York, Governor Sherrill from New Jersey, and Mayor Mondani from New York. So you had quite a crowd down there.
We did. We had a really amazing crowd. And there were a number of ambassadors there representing their countries. We brought the governors together and the mayor because we felt it was really important to have that representation on this day, on July 4th, right? And so what we did is we had a special event for them, and it was a ringing of the bell, to kind of kick off the parade. But it wasn't just any bell. It was the ship's bell from the tall ship Waiver Tree from the South Street Seaport Museum.
Right, which is here in New York.
Yeah, and so this bell had been lost for 50 years, and it was discovered kind of in a back closet somewhere. And so they brought the bell back. We got the bell, and I wanted to ring it as kind of this symbol of the port of New York, right? And the symbol of the seaport and the importance of that foundation of commerce in the building of America. So we rung that. We had the governors all hold hands, and they rung the bell together, on TV, which was broadcast via our TV partner, NBC, on the Today Show. And it was just an amazing moment.
I think that's pretty cool, and you got that on tape, so we'll let that. Yeah. For us here in New York, it's special seeing so many people, but I have to think it was important to these people from overseas, and like you said, 46 countries represented.
Yeah. It's true. Part of my job, once the ships came in, has been to go and visit every ship, welcome the captain, welcome the crew, talk to people, interact, and the ships all host official receptions. And so I was boarding the Spanish tall ship Juan Sebastián de Elcano last night. It was during their official reception. It's something they do when these ships come into the ports. They bring the community together, and they bring the officials, the diplomats together from America and from their country, for a really special moment. And the ambassador of Spain gave me a big hug, and she, said, "Chris, thank you so much. We did it. We're here. We're here for America's 250th." And it was an amazing moment.
There were a lot of tall ships, but there were some yachts out there, and one of them that really stood out to me was the Twiga.
Yeah, well, Twiga and Viola, a smaller partner vessel, along with Ticonderoga, a number of historic vessels were here too. And Twiga came from Monaco, and the ship was brought specifically for this moment because they felt it was so important to be here for it.
Well, Twiga is special, and Ticonderoga, designed by the great L. Francis Harrisoff, owned by Scott France, and I've been on the boats a few times, and Scott keeps the boat in absolute Bristol condition. I think every time they go sail, they get the varnish brush out and clean it up a little bit. And it's a boat that had quite a history racing, dating back to the 1930s.
She did, and she also had quite an incredible history serving in the U.S. Navy as a guardian of the southern coastline of Long Island during World War II. So she was painted gray, and she went to work out offshore along Long Island.
It's hard for me to envision Ticonderoga being painted gray, but it was probably a good call during those times with the U-boats coming up and down.
Well, she was wooden hulled, so no one was worried about the mines or kind of the magnetic attraction. Yeah.
Pretty special. All right, so the tall ships head up this week to Boston. The others take off and go on to that. What about Sailforth 250? What's on the docket now for you for the next few months? The future?
Yeah, we will be regrouping. We're looking at what our options are for the next time to bring countries together. We feel as an organization we've created an incredible amount of goodwill, and the relationships we've built are going to go a long way. So we're looking forward to looking at the next thing. The port here in New York, there are ports around the world that host these events regularly. And we're looking at establishing New York as one of them, and things are a little harder in New York just because of the infrastructure, and it's a big busy city. So, but that's what we're looking at.
Well, Chris, to you and your whole team, congratulations. Well done.
Thanks, Gary.
You're a hero. I know you had a few challenges with the storm on Friday night, but you made good, and the goodwill around the world really came forth. So well done.
Thanks.
Well, we're going to take a look at another tall ship. Chris mentioned it, the Amerigo Vespucci, a 329 full-rig, three-masted training vessel from Italy. And it's one of the most beautiful boats here in the harbor. They had a reception last night, and the word I got from people that were there is the boat is absolutely spectacular. So with that, let's take a look at the Amerigo Vespucci.
In 1931, the Amerigo Vespucci was launched. This Italian vessel gets launched in a year that is quite exciting for the United States. We're going to see that the Star-Spangled Banner became the official U.S. national anthem. Now, this was quite a process. The Star-Spangled Banner was originally written in 1814 by Francis Scott Key, who had composed the lyrics after witnessing the massive overnight British bombardment of Fort McHenry in Maryland during the War of 1812. Now, throughout the 19th century, the Star-Spangled Banner was regarded by most of the U.S. Armed Forces and by other groups as our national anthem. But it's not until 1916 and the signing of an executive order by President Woodrow Wilson that it was formally designated as such. And in 1931, Congress passes an act finally confirming Wilson's presidential order, with President Herbert Hoover signing it into law on March 3rd. Now, also being signed into law at that same time is Nevada legalizing gambling. Going against the law is Al Capone. He is finally taken down when he was convicted of tax evasion. This signaled the downfall of one of the most notorious criminals of the 1920s and 1930s. He is going to be sentenced to 11 years in federal prison and fined $50,000. Now, this same year, Thomas Edison does die, but the George Washington Bridge is dedicated 8 months ahead of schedule. This 4,760-foot long suspension bridge was at that time the longest one in the world. And Franklin Delano Roosevelt told the assembled crowd that this will be a highly successful enterprise. And within the first year, 5 million cars went from New York to New Jersey and back again. And finishing out this exciting year of 1931, the Empire State Building is dedicated.
I'm Captain Italian Navy Nicasio Falica. I'm the commanding officer of Amerigo Vespucci, the Italian training ship. We are proud to be here because our presence here strengthened the transatlantic bond and the institutional, military and cultural relationships with our allies with the United States. So an initiative launched by the Ministry of Defense and the Italian Navy, and very proud to be here today. The ship was built in 1931. It was one of the two Navy training ships, so Amerigo Vespucci and Cristoforo Colombo, the two connected with the discovery of America. But at the end of Second World War, the Cristoforo Colombo was given to Soviet Union, so Russia, at the end of the war. So Vespucci remained the only sailing training vessel. This is the 95 years of age, and it is the 19th training campaign. The colors, the black and white stripes, take their origin from the ancient sailing vessels. Looking at the other ships, probably we have the larger number of cadets of midshipmen on board. So we are 240 crew members, but from today we will embark the cadets from Naval Academy. We will become 430 on board, and it is a 101 meter long, considering all the length, but the hull is 82 meters, so you can understand 430 people on board here in an 82 hull meters ship. And then we do this job since 1931, so I think this is one of the main characteristics making special or different Amerigo Vespucci. I think because we can talk about innovation. Italian Navy, like other navies, is an innovation armed force, but we cannot have innovation renouncing to tradition. So traditional sailing, operating, I think its meaning is for training midshipmen, training sailors, our ancient sailors did before us. I think it's a school of life, not only a school of navy or school of maneuver. Here the cadets learn to challenge with their limits, to challenge with their limits in the natural element, that is the sea, that is the wind, and it is different. Amerigo Vespucci is just in front of the ship. His shape is with a book, so he studies to sail towards America. We feel proud to have an Italian flag, so our three colors always on our mast, and proud it can fly to the wind wherever we go, and also here in the United States. And then other thing, we use vegetal fiber ropes and sails. We have 2,600 square meters of sails on board, and we have 36 kilometers of vegetal fiber ropes on board. And another thing probably that makes unique this ship is, in 1962, there was a meeting at sea between Amerigo Vespucci and the USS Independence. It was an aircraft carrier by United States. The Independence asked to this ship, this black and white ship with sails, "What's your ship's name?" The answer was, "It is Italian Navy training ship Amerigo Vespucci." And the answer from USS Independence in 1962 was, "You are the most beautiful ship in the world." Everyone is enthusiastic to be here, enthusiastic for this campaign. It's a part of World's Tour. It's a North American campaign 2026. Very proud of that. The cadets will embark today. I think they will be enthusiastic too. Look at all and to be curious, to ask, to be eager to ask everything, because our crew members will be proud to answer to all your questions about our ship, about the boats. The very old boats we have on board, the very tall masts, the sails, the ropes. I'm proud to be the captain of this Italian ship in this international organization in the United States with all other countries' storeships here.
Can you imagine the pride of the crew of the Vespucci when they get the word from the aircraft carrier Independence, "You're the most beautiful ship in the world"? And that still resonates with everybody today. And I particularly like that one shot where they lit up the sails in the colors of the Italian national flag. Very cool. We've been talking about here for the last couple of days about the importance of sail training. And one of the boats that we're going to talk about in a few minutes, the Pap Union, also does some sail training. But to give you a sense of what sail training is all about, we got on a couple of tall ships here in the United States and talk to some of the young people that are going through this, and you'll get a sense of what it's all about. So here's a little look at sail training.
Sail training, it's real. It's about getting a bunch of people in one common environment with one common goal and get done the job of sailing the ship.
It's important to imagine the days when tall ships plied the harbors and coastlines of America. Happily, they still have a place in the lore of American history. Tall ships rendezvous attract thousands of people each year to pay homage to these traditional sailing vessels. Sail training keeps the traditions of the past fresh and alive for today's young sailors.
The best part of it is the lifestyle. I get to travel around, take my home with me, and get to do cool stuff like this.
Sailing and maintaining a tall ship requires special skills that last a lifetime. Organizations like Tall Ships America and the United States Coast Guard offer an educational path that focuses on sailing, seamanship, and personal growth.
It makes you value what you've created a lot more. It gives you a stronger connection with the ship that you've helped to create and the crew that you're a part of.
Sailors in these programs learn how to handle sails, rigging, and maintain a wooden vessel, and learn how to build a team and develop leadership skills. Through tasks like navigation, steering, and going aloft, they gain the self-confidence to excel.
Set topsail and then brace sharp.
That's 2 points. Topsail, brace sharp, bye.
There's always excitement when exploring new ports and experiencing endless sunsets. Sail training vessels provide a unique opportunity for people of all ages and skill levels to enjoy an offshore or coastal sailing experience.
Okay, fire!
The past lives on aboard these historic and magnificent sailing vessels of yesteryear.
Words cannot describe when you're at sea and they kill the engine and it's just quiet and you look up and see all that sail.
In 2016, the largest sail training vessel in Latin America launched, the Union, out of Peru. Now, in 2016, we have an exciting year in which the infamous drug lord El Chapo was captured by Mexican authorities. This is the same year that we unfortunately lost the legendary musician Prince, who was 57 when he took an accidental overdose. Now, in this same year, Hillary Clinton accepted the Democratic nomination for president. 95 years after women were first granted the right to vote, the former Secretary of State, Senator, and First Lady made history by accepting the Democratic Party's nomination for president, becoming the first woman to lead a major U.S. political party. In this same year, we also have Mother Teresa becoming a saint, and the Chicago Cubs winning the first World Series title since 1908, snapping a curse.
I'm Lieutenant Luis Bergoncini. I'm the main prop officer here on board. We're very excited to pass the July 4th with sailing and arriving to New York in between two brother countries. The VIP Union is very special because it was built in Peru 10 years ago by Peruvian workers. It's the largest ship in the world. It has 115.5 meters of length and a beam of 13 meters. The ship's name, it is because the Corvette Union. The Corvette Union was a ship that participated in the Pacific War. We have the history of that Corvette here inside the ship. Well, this is a bronze plate with the Nike goddess. It's a god from the past times that represents the victory. So she's like an inspiration for the sailors. And in the center, you can see a wooden piece. Yeah, that wooden piece is a part of the Corvette Union that was sunk in Peru. Well, this is the steering wheel. It's a type of government we have here on board. It's an hydraulic system, and also we have the Peruvian flag. And also because the word union means the same in most languages. So union is union. Yeah, it was made because the Peruvian midshipmen needs a sail ship to train their mariner abilities on the sea. It's very important because the sailors start sailing in this kind of ships. It's part of our history, so we need to know how to use them. Also, we don't use only the sails. We still rely in the old ways of navigation using the stars, the moon, and the sun. In case the modern technology doesn't work, we need to use them. We are a four-masted ship. We have 4 masts. It's very important, the 4 of them, because that's where you put the sails. We have 34 sails in the ship. The bronze Inca figure in the bow, it has a lot of culture and history. It was made by an artist, a Peruvian artist. It has a little bit of each culture in Peru. The Inca, the Nile dragons. There are a lot of things that make the Inca figure very special. The Peruvian flag is a red, white, red flag. In the middle of the flag, it has a shield with a quinoa tree, the llama, and also the golden horn. These are the officers' swords. We use it in special occasions like ceremonies, and they represent our leadership. This is the midshipman wardroom. Here the midshipmen eat, study. Since we sail like 5-6 months all years, they have to continue studying in the same courses that they do in the Naval Academy, so they here do all the courses. This is an officer's cabin. Here the officers sleep and also work. The cabins are for 1 or 2 officers, depending of the space. We are looking for a couple, and also here we have a chaplain with us that is sailing with us. He works with us, eats with us, trains with us, and when someone wants to come here, he's always here to talk with us if we need it. We are more or less 240 people, sailors on the ship. We are like 30 officers, 80 cadets, and the rest of them are sailors. Yeah, we are very excited. We work with a lot of enthusiasm, and we are very happy to be here. For the Peruvian Americans citizens, we are very proud of you. You are all invited to the VIP Union. This is your house, the house of all Peruvians.
You know, I really love the shots aboard vessels like the Union. That shot of the captain's cabin, that looks pretty nice. And then he called it the temple or cathedral. If you need a quiet moment, pretty special place. We've been showing a lot of footage here and reports over the last 3 days. And people have been asking, how do I get to see this further? And we're going to have a YouTube channel, so you'll be able to see different individual parts of these various people, reports that we've done over the last couple days. Well, Ayo Haynes has been spending her time around the waterfront, and even though it's kind of inclement today, over the past couple of days, she got to speak to some people that have interesting careers in the military and are just hanging around New York, amazed by the scene of the flight past, the vessels coursing up the river. I mean, it's really a spectacle. So let's go back to Ayo Haynes and see who she's been talking to and what we can learn from her discussions.
Hey, Gary, I am here with Richard Rudy Rudak, who's here from Hawaii, and he's going to tell us what he does, which is with the divers. Tell me more.
Yeah, so I've been a Coast Guard diver for 3 years now. Currently stationed in Honolulu, Hawaii, and it's been one of the best experiences of my life. We get to travel all over the world. We get to dive on ships, make sure that all of the Coast Guard's assets are fully ready to go. And we get to come out to great community events like this, interact with the public, and get to show them what we do. It's fantastic.
How long have you been doing this?
I've been a diver for 3 years. Before that, I was a bosun's mate in the Coast Guard, and in total I've been in the Coast Guard for 7 years.
Were you a diver before you got into the Coast Guard?
I was. I learned how to dive in Roatan, Honduras. My aunt taught me how, and I just fell in love with being in the water. I also grew up a swimmer, played water polo, and I've just always been in the water. And so becoming a diver felt like a natural progression.
Okay, so tell me what it means, or what kind of work you have to go through to be selected as a diver.
Yeah, so it's kind of a long process. Right now you have to be either an E4 or an E5 to become a diver. They're about to change that to open it up to E2s or E3s. But you put in your application package, and then if you get picked up from the application, you go to a week-long screener in Cape May, New Jersey, where it is PT every day, all day for a week. And that process, we start out with normally about 20 people, and then by the end of mine, we went down to 7. 6 months later, I went to dive school in Panama City, Florida. we started with 6 coasties. One of the guys from the screener didn't make it. And then by the time we graduated, it was 4. Throughout dive school, we all call it like the best worst time of our life because it's, once again, just nonstop PT every day for about 4.5 months. But at the same time, we're diving, we're hanging out with the greatest group of people in the world, and just, we're having a great time doing it.
And once you finish PT school and dive school, do you see these people again, or everyone scattered to the wind in different divisions?
Oh, absolutely. We see each other all the time. So the Coast Guard only actually has 66 to 70 divers in it right now. And so split that up amongst 3 dive lockers that are always on the road traveling with each other. I see these guys all the time. And it's awesome because the community is so great. Everybody loves what they do so much that it was one of the draws to the community for me was just how much everybody is excited to do the job.
So after Florida, you got stationed in Honolulu?
That's correct. And so, like I said, I've been out there for 3 years, and since I've been out there, I've gotten to travel all over the Hawaiian Islands. I've gotten to go to Midway Atoll, been to Antarctica, Singapore, Juneau, Guam, all of this for dive. And I've gotten to experience some crazy things that most people never get to experience.
Okay, so I know diving in Florida is very different from diving in Antarctica.
Oh, absolutely.
Tell me what that must have been like.
It was a trip for sure. I think just being down there in and of itself, you're like, wow, I'm in Antarctica, a place not many people get to go, and the water temperature is 28 degrees, and we have very specialized rigs that allow us to dive in that water safely. And so really, as daunting as it seems on the surface, once you get in the water, it's just like any other job. And then you come back up and you get to see beautiful Antarctic mountains, and you get to remember what cool place you're in.
And you get to see the wildlife there.
Unfortunately, I didn't get to see much wildlife. Mostly saw little nudibranchs and sea cucumbers. The viz was very good, though. And so, regardless, it was an incredible experience.
Okay, you might not be able to answer this question, but what is one of your more memorable experiences or jobs that you had to do as a diver?
Oh, man. Even though it's not the most exciting place, I was diving in Kahului Harbor, Maui. And our job was to reposition all of the buoys in Kahului Harbor to make way for a dredge to come through and re-dredge the channel. And it was about a week and a half of diving 8 hours a day in the water, repositioning buoys, which is really hard, strenuous work, and zero visibility. We couldn't see anything that we were doing. We were doing everything by feel. And just every day getting out of the water was a new, incredibly memorable experience. And it was, once again, with the greatest group of people ever, too. So.
And do you expect that you'll make a career out of this?
Oh, absolutely. I don't see myself wanting to do anything else. 20 is what you need for the pension, of course, but I could see myself going further than that with this community and with this job.
And do you get a chance to give back to younger divers or people who are thinking about joining the Air Force or the Coast Guard to learn how to dive and be a part of your squad?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have it's kind of an unofficial program right now. We're working to get a little bit more real infrastructure to it, but we call it the Mud Pub program. And that's where potential dive candidates get to come to a locker and they get to PT with us. They get to see what we do every day, and they get to just ask as many questions as they can about the job. Because I know when I was coming up to try and be a diver, there's not a lot of us, so it's hard to find people to talk about.
Well, I saw that you have an exhibition here. What's that about? That's teaching people like me how to dive or what you experience?
Sort of, yeah. It's just a big community outreach thing since not a ton of people know about us. I mean, there's people in the Coast Guard that don't even know that we have divers. And so to get to come here and just show people, like, hey, this is what we do. This is how awesome our job is. And look how awesome our group of people is, too. It's a super valuable experience.
I found this person that I've never seen before. I have no idea who she is, but she seems to be having a good time. And she might be related to someone on the crew. I don't know. What's your name?
Ayo Haynes.
This is my daughter. She's 11 years old, and I dragged her very willingly to our set today. She's been with us for the whole Sail Forth 250. What do you think about this whole experience?
It's a one-in-a-lifetime experience. This is going to happen again when I'm 60, 62. So you have to experience it when you're young because you never know when you're going to see it again.
That is so true. I mean, I in 50 years, I'm not sure if I'll be here. I hope with the advancement of medical technology, maybe I'll be here. But you get to say to your children that you were here for the semi-quincentennial, say that 5 times fast, and share that with your children.
Yeah, it's gonna. I feel like I could take them here. I could do what you do. I take them here for Sail Forth 300.
She's already putting in her bid for a job 50 years from now. This is my child. And so, what about your friends? What do you think they're going to say when you share this experience with them?
They're probably going to be jealous of me, like, wow, she went there.
What so far has been the highlight, including not just here on the pier, the Intrepid Pier, but maybe even last night?
Oh, I went on the boat. What's the boat called?
Amerigo Vespucci?
The Amerigo Vespucci. Yeah, that's fancy. I went on that around 10 minutes ago, and it was really fun. It was nice to see all the
ropes?
The ropes, and go like on top of the ship, not just inside. That was really cool.
Do you think you'll ever sail on one of these, or do you want to take sailing lessons now? Because I have been asking her to do that.
No, it's not changing.
Gary, you have to help me with this. I have to convince this girl to take some sailing lessons. Maybe if Gary gave you some lessons.
Okay. Yeah.
Gary, she says yes to you. Well, thank you again for being here and supporting the crew. She's been taking pictures behind the scenes and video, uploading them to Instagram for our Sailforth show. And so here we are, right?
Here we are.
Here we are.
Here we are.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Well, I think Aoife can get some sailing lessons for sure. And if I have to be the one to do it, it would be my honor. And, you know, she's only 11 years old, and notice that she's the same height as her mother. And I said, do you play any basketball? And she said, yes, I do. So there we go. The B's, boating and basketball, all tied together. Very special. And Ayo, thank you. Ayo, you did a good job with the people you interviewed. Thank you very much for being around the waterfront. We're going to move on to another tall ship. This one is from Poland. Her name is the Dar Modezi, but the sailors on the boat just call it the Dar M, which is certainly a lot easier for me. This is a very big boat. It's 354 feet long, and it comes from the Gdynia Maritime University, which of course is a very famous seaport that we read about some years ago. And this vessel is relatively new compared to the others. She was built 44 years ago in 1982. So let's take a little look and learn about the history of the Dar M.
In 1982, Poland's Dar Modezi was built. In that year, we have singer Ozzy Osbourne biting the head off of a bat on stage at the same time as Ebony and Ivory began a 7-week run as the #1 spot on the pop charts. In this same year, E.T. the Extraterrestrial was launched, but so was Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Now, this is also the year that the Vietnam Veterans Memorial was dedicated. After nearly the end of a week-long national salute to Americans who had served in Vietnam War, the Vietnam's Veterans Memorial was dedicated in D.C. The long-awaited memorial is inscribed with the names of 57,939 Americans who died in the conflict. Their names are arranged in order of death, not rank, as was common in other memorials. 1982 was also the beginning of the era of workout videos launched by Jane Fonda. Sadly, it was also the year that Hollywood star and real-life princess Grace Kelly died.
Representing Poland is Dar Modezi, whose name means Gift of the Youth. For decades, she's carried young cadets around the world, teaching seamanship, leadership, and the traditions that can only be learned under sail. At 354 feet long, with more than 32,000 square feet of sail, she carries a professional crew alongside 136 cadets, making her one of the largest sail training ships in the world. Fun fact, in 1987, Dharma Daisy completed a voyage around the world, sailing more than 36,000 nautical miles as Poland's ambassador at sea.
My name is Michał Sadowski. I'm the commander of sailing ship Darmodzieży, frigate of Gdynia Maritime University from Poland. Of course, we are very excited because 50 years ago, also the ship of our school, Dar Pomorza, was participating in 200th anniversary. We are very happy to be here. It's very important for us. It's a very special event. Sailing is always the best because first we save the fuel, we save environment, we are getting much better speed, and also it's more quiet in my area on the ship, in my cabin.
I like the pictures there of the Dharma Daisy heading out to sea. And it's always a great moment of anticipation when you actually make what's called departure, when you're leaving the dock and heading out to sea. And I got to spend a little time with our cadets at the U.S. Coast Guard Academy's Eagle as they were preparing their departure and what it's like to go to sea. So with that in mind, let's take a look at departure.
One of the great moments for any sailor is making departure. There's an old saying that men and ships rot in port, and there's some truth to this fable. There's always great anticipation when you head to sea. No one actually knows what's in store. Will the weather bring light winds or heavy? One thing is certain, that every voyage is an adventure and unique. The purpose of most tall ships is to provide sail training for aspiring naval, merchant, and Coast Guard officers. While modern ships are powered by fuel and engines, the lessons learned aboard a tall ship under sail are invaluable. It takes great teamwork to operate a tall ship. Every maneuver must be done with careful precision. Every athletic coach would be impressed with the teamwork used to set and trim a ship's sails. Sail training includes the art of navigation, using sextants and celestial bodies to find your way. Underway, all members of the crew stand to watch. 4 hours on and 4 hours off keeps everyone busy. Maintenance is an important part of the routine. The sailors and cadets must learn all the systems aboard a ship. If you can perform your duties well under sail, you are proficient on any other vessel powered by engines. Stonewall Jackson wrote about the importance of the chain of command at sea. He said, "But men and officers must obey, no matter at what cost to their feelings. For obedience to orders, instant and unhesitating, is not only the lifeblood of armies and navies, but the security of states." It's a great feeling to leave land. The Verrazano Bridge lies ahead. The sails are up. The ship is underway. There's a poignant passage written in 1943 by a U.S. Coast Guard Academy cadet about life at sea. He said, "Suddenly the shrill whistle of the bosun's pipe and the booming voice, 'All hands, sail stations!' The captain's command booms through his brass megaphone. 'Helm a lee!' The ship comes into the eye of the wind. All sails are flapping. Then they go aback. Rise tacks and sheets. Weather main. And as the wind pulls close to the weather bow, mainsails full. And with that, the wind fills the sails with a resounding crack. The ship is underway." The bonds between shipmates last a lifetime. It's a great experience. How lucky for these young cadets and aspiring future officers to be at sea with their best friends, working together and building the confidence that they too will one day take command of their own vessel.
Portuguese tall ship Sagres was built in 1937. This is the year that FDR starts his second term out of his 4 terms that he will be elected to. It is also the year that the Hindenburg disaster occurs in New Jersey. This was the largest dirigible ever built and the pride of Nazi Germany that unfortunately burst into flames upon touching its mooring mast. Now, on a happier note, the Golden Gate Bridge did open in San Francisco. This same year, we also see the Duke of Windsor wedding American socialite Wallis Simpson. Now, the Duke of Windsor was formerly King Edward VIII of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and he married a divorced American socialite for whom he abdicated the British throne. This is also the year that Amelia Earhart disappeared. She attempted to fly around the world and unfortunately lost her bearings during the most challenging leg of the global journey.
José Sousa Luís, commanding officer of Sagres, the Portuguese tall ship. This ship was built in 1947 in Hamburg, Germany, and served as a training ship for German Navy. Is the launch of the ship to the water in Hamburg in October in 1937. The ship has the original name as Albert Leoschlageter. When the Second World War finished, the ship passed from US, but US sell at a good price for the Brazilian Navy and take the name of Guanabara. In 1915, the Portuguese buy the ship to the Brazilians and put the name Sagres. So this ship is under the Portuguese sail since 1962. Sagres is a point in the south coast of Portugal where is supposed to exist a school of sailors, which was very important for the discoveries, but is a mythical school. Sagres is a training ship. This is the best platform to the cadets, the future Navy officers, put in practical some theoretical knowledge they learn in naval school. In the ship like this, the cadets, they really feel and know what is a local breeze, what is the passage of a cool or of a warm front, what is the influence of the ocean currents in the navigational plan. This is the best platform to form truly sailors and to understand the sea. This is the bell of Sagres. We ring the bell in half an hour to make the time for the watch when we are sailing. Sagres made 3 round-the-world mission. This is the first one from 1978 to 1979. This picture is from the last round-the-world mission across the mythical Cape Horn in the southwest point of America continent. This is the captain's office where the captains work and receive VIP visitors. We are on board 2 barrels of Madeira wine because it was with Madeira wine the foundation father make a toast to the independence in 1776. We have these 2 barrels to promote that historical act and promote our Madeira wine too. This ship is very special for all the Portuguese because it's a symbol of Portugal. Portugal is a diaspora country. There is Portuguese in all countries when we dock, and US is not the exception. Sagres is known like the traveling ambassador of Portugal. When we dock, we promote our culture, our maritime heritage, and support our foreign policy when we are in a harbor. But
as a Navy ship, this is national territory. So when we are docking in a foreign country, we invite our diaspora to take the opportunity to reduce the homesickness and reinforce the bond with Portugal. Every Portuguese knows this ship. We have cadets and crew, we have 145, and all body is very, very excited to stay in New York in the historic moment of the celebration of the independence of the country. We'll make an international naval review and we are open to visit in that historic moment.
I found it fascinating that Sawgrass sailed across the ocean and part of her cargo were a couple of kegs of Madeira wine, significantly the same wine that George Washington and the others in the Continental Congress used to celebrate their achievement with the Declaration of Independence. How cool is that? And remember, the Sawgrass is one of the 4 sister ships built by Germany, and they're going to be having a race, we use that term loosely, from New York up to Boston here later this week. So very cool. And you, once again, can tell the passion of the officers aboard the vessel for their ship. And as he mentioned, everybody in Portugal all knows about the Sawgrass. It's a ship of national pride. So with that in mind, we're going to move on and hear from Dr. Tara Ryder again, and she's going to give us a little time in history with some of these vessels. I'm Gary Jobson, and we're going to continue our conversation with Dr. Tara Ryder. So let's shift gears here a little bit. You know, you mentioned this a little bit earlier, that almost exclusively the crews and officers on these vessels were male. Now, I want to tell you a little stat that I'm quite proud of, that today in the sport of sailing, we have absolute gender equity in sailing in the Olympic Games. 50% of the competitors are male and 50% are female, and there's exactly even medal opportunities for both men and women. And in a couple of the classes, we have what's called a mixed crew, 1 man and 1 woman on the same boat competing, and it doesn't matter who steers. That's up to usually you want the taller one out on a trapeze wire and the shorter steering. But anyway, we've come a long way than where it once was. Did any women go on these boats?
Women definitely have been on the boats. They have steered them, they have commandeered them, they have been passengers on them, but they were always a really, really tiny minority when we're thinking about working on the boats. Obviously, we know women have been passengers. We would not be here in the United States if women had not arrived on the Mayflower and all of those other, immigrant vessels coming over. There is no legal restriction anywhere in the world that said women could not go to sea. But we do have to recognize that the sailor's life wasn't for most men, definitely was not going to be for most women either. And you do have women who went, and you can go literally back to kind of mythology, and you'll hear about women who were Phoenicians and some of the early Viking shield maidens. We do have evidence of women sailors even in the British Navy. Again, though, they would have had to hide their identity because this was seen as a masculine world. And so from the working perspective of being a sailor, that was seen as being a man's job. Women were back at home and hearth. But we do have women who went to sea. They often hid their identity, so this might have been binding their breasts, which would not have been seen as unusual, because if you think about it, a lot of times we often bind kind of our chest for back support. So sailors did do that, and there were kind of other ways. Short hair. They didn't shave, but they could often pass as being younger. So again, kind of that passing a higher pitched voice, not quite yet having a beard. We do have some women that we've been able to track, and you see that they jumped ship quite a bit so that they kind of changed personalities. Most women that we know of were discovered either when they were about to be punished or if they got sick. So again, kind of a way to get out of that punishment. But we have in the British Navy, I know there's a record of at least 20 women who served during that time. We also have women, though, on board, as I said, as passengers,
But in the 19th century, we actually have vessels that become known as hen frigates. And this was part of the whaling life, because whalers were going to sea, and a typical whaling voyage was 3 to 4 years. And so if you were a captain, so we have Captain Gary over here, does he necessarily want to leave his wife behind? And keep in mind, there might have only been 6 weeks for him to meet his wife, flirt with her, marry her, and now he's like, hi, I'm leaving for 3 to 4 years if I'm lucky. Now, depending on the woman, I might have been like, have a nice voyage. Or I might have been, this is the age of romance after all. I might have gone to sea with you. And what that would have meant was that these were vessels that typically had only one woman on board, the captain's wife. And it really came down to the captain, what her experience was going to be like. For some captains, they were very strict that the only person she was allowed to interact with would be her husband and maybe the first mate. Because there was a fear that she might mother the sailors and that they would not be strong men who could fight Mother Nature. Others, they had a little bit more flexibility, and there's a lot that's been written, because we actually know a lot about these women because they did have a lot to do at sea, which meant they kept journals. And they wrote about everything that was happening. And that's one of the interesting things about the 19th century whaling period, is we have such a detailed kind of catalog of what life was like at that period. But it definitely was not interesting. Imagine going to sea with your husband, and 9 months later, you're about to have a baby. And guess who your OBGYN is? That would be your husband. So again, this was a very challenging life, but it was also an experience. A woman could come back to a place like Sag Harbor, New York, and be like, oh, I went to the Sandwich Islands and I was over, in China, and come back and have this very kind of cosmopolitan, worldly experience. And different women, some went for one time and some spent decades at sea with their husbands. So there's a really kind of varied experience here.
So the National Sailing Hall of Fame is doing their next induction this coming October, which is in Newport, Rhode Island. And one of the inductees is a woman, Eleanor Cressy. And she was quite a navigator of some renown, flying Cloud, the famous vessel, the Donald Mackay ship that she was on. So, I don't know.
I was about to say, so in the middle of the 19th century, 1850s, she goes to sea with her husband. And what's interesting is this isn't simply a wife and a husband going to sea. She is the navigator for this vessel.
And it was tricky.
And
of course, they were trying to break a record, too.
They were trying to break a record, but this is also about making money, about how fast can you get from East Coast to the West Coast. These are what are known as the clipper ships, and it's all about speed and being able to get from point A to point B as quickly as possible. And there had been a prediction that if you'd be able to go from the East Coast, from New York to California, it would be 85 days. And literally after the guy said this would be like phenomenal, he also said you couldn't do it. And so they end up going to break, when she navigates, they break this record. They make it from New York to California in 89 days and 21 hours with her navigating. She will later break that record. She cuts like 13 hours, I think, off of it. And what's really interesting is that they were a team. This was not simply a by chance. This was her husband recognizing her skill set. She read about kind of all of the growing knowledge at that time about how to navigate, was interested in any of the ideas, whether they were scientific or fantasy, just to see what could be done better.
Well, the Cressy name in Marblehead, Massachusetts, just north of Boston, is an important name. I think there's a Cressy Park in Marblehead, and she has some descendants up in that area. There's a book, The Practical Navigator, written by Nathaniel Bowditch, which is, I'm sure you've spent some time on that book, and I have too. And we inducted Nathaniel Bowditch into the Hall of Fame, I think it was 2015. So at the National Sailing Hall of Fame induction, Nathaniel Bowditch's great-great-grandson is accepting the award on his behalf from his grandfather. He gets up and he says, I probably would have been smarter if my great-great-grandfather hadn't married his cousin. I thought that was pretty colorful. But Bowditch had a big influence on navigation in the world, and the American Practical Navigator is still in use today. The academies have it as required reading for anybody that's going to be on a bridge of a ship. And, he was an important guy.
It's something to keep in mind. Navigation and how to get from point A to point B is in many ways much more modern than we have to think about. We've used the stars as sailors for thousands of years, but the idea of being able to determine longitude is a very recent idea, the end of the 18th century, and the use of the sextant. But one of the challenges is most sailors were not literate, let alone understanding higher maths. And so part of the benefit that Bowditch provided was giving mathematical tables so that you didn't necessarily have to do tangents and all of that higher math that I don't know that I remember how to do. You kind of had a cheat sheet. But it is really fascinating because today we're all used to using GPS to navigate. But what happens when the electric goes down? And so the sextant is actually still a really practical tool, and we do see many of our modern navies actually teaching officers how to use it.
Well, I remember the horror of doing a Mercator projection problem where you start here and you end up there. What's the course and distance going to be? And you got to figure out. And there was tables that would help you, but the biggest mistakes were simply addition and subtraction. You want to be really careful on how you did that. So you're off the ship. You're in Lower Manhattan. You're feeling really good. You got a nice wad of cash in your pocket from the couple years you spent out at sea. And what do? You go off and get your more than your share of rum, and you have a night and you fall asleep, and you wake up the next day and you're on a vessel. You've been shanghaied. What is that all about?
So this is something to keep in mind, and this is a kind of process that has happened at different periods of time in different parts of the world. The earliest terms, kind of, if we're thinking from an American and British viewpoint, is impressment. And this typically happened during times of war when there simply wasn't enough sailors joining the Navy at that time. And so if I need more sailors, I am going to literally go into these the seaports area, into what's often known as the red light districts, because sailors were known for being a little rowdy when they came ashore. They kind of got to break off all the rules, that structure they had at sea, they kind of threw off when they were back on land. And so they're going to spend their money. But where do I find sailors? Because if I want sailors for my British naval vessel, I don't want a landlubber. I don't want someone who doesn't yet know what port and starboard is and what all these different lines. I want an expert. I want a seaman. And so I'm going to wait until Gary has his rum and maybe a little bit more rum. And you know what, Gary? I understand. Let me buy you some rum. And they're going to literally get them drunk so they pass out. And the next thing, as you said, they're going to wake up on a vessel. And so this was the idea of press gangs wandering through. But we see it continuing even into kind of more modern times in the 19th century, especially when we're looking at this trade with Asia, where cargo was so valuable. This is pepper, this is silk, all of the spices. And that's where the term Shanghaied kind of came from, was that they were going to end up on a vessel going to Shanghai. With the impressment, especially with like the navies, typically they wanted to put you on a ship that was not coming back to your home port because it would be harder to jump ship. And so again, with being Shanghaied, you're going around the world, so you're not going to know anyone that's going to be able to help you. Of course, this was not great for morale, and I will say most officers preferred sailors who volunteered to be on their crews rather than those who were impressed or Shanghaied, simply because they knew that they would jump ship as soon as possible.
It makes it a intriguing tale, though. That is for sure. Tara, it's been great talking with you. You have a encyclopedic knowledge of all things maritime, and thank you very much. And we'll look forward to continuing watching the tall ships go up and down the Hudson River and New York Harbor here. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Could you imagine waking up with a headache? Now you're on a ship and you've been shanghaied. It's just a horrifying thought. But somewhere along the way, you've got to shift your mind from, oh my gosh, I'm shanghaied, this is unfair, to I better get with the program or get myself in real trouble. Being on these vessels is quite a challenge. And one of the biggest ones is going up the mast. These rigs are about 170 feet high, and there's only one way to get up there. There's no elevator. You got to climb yourself up there. So we spent some time in the Coast Guard Eagle, and we got a bird's eye view of what it's like to climb the rig of the Eagle. Let's go on board and find out, and put yourself in that position and think about what it would be like for you if you did this.
One of the most romantic and yet feared moments in a tall ship is climbing the mast. Aboard the U.S. Coast Guard Academy's Bark Eagle, cadets climb the mast to handle the sails. There are 22,000 square feet of sail aboard the Eagle. The old sailor's adage, one hand for yourself and one for the ship, is certainly appropriate when deploying or furling the sails. Under full rig, the Eagle flies 23 different sails from her 3 masts. Raising, lowering, and positioning the sails is hard work. It takes well-coordinated teamwork to make everything run smoothly. Cadets use a safety belt when going aloft. Going up is not mandatory, but anyone who chooses to go up must perform a supervised climb to a platform at the top of the mast called the Fighting Tops. Cadet Eli Wu performs this demonstration climb with a head camera. It's amazing how she and her fellow cadet, JJ Cestero, are not out of breath and simply climb the 150-foot mast with no fear at all. One of the scarier moments is passing the crow's nest, because you actually have to lean backwards for several rungs of the rope ladder to get over the threshold. On board the Eagle, cadets get their first taste of life at sea. The mission of the Academy is well defined by the time spent aboard the Eagle. Aloft in the rigging, cadets learn to rely on their own strength. America's future Coast Guard officers appreciate the tradition of being under sail and learn about the respect one needs for a career at sea. The view from the top of the mast gets more spectacular with every step. At the top of the mast on a clear day, cadets can see over 14 nautical miles in every direction. Put yourself on board. Would you like to climb this rig? For Ellie and JJ, they're very much at home up this mast. How was it?
It was great. There's a nice view outside.
Yeah. Did it get your heart going? All the adrenaline pumping going up the rig?
Oh, it was racing.
Yeah, it always gets sketchy way up at the top.
Especially because of the wind, too. So it gets a lot more windy up when we get up to the Royals. It gets pretty crowded up there because a lot of the rigging gets really narrow. So you have to be very careful for your footing.
Overcoming fear of heights is an important milestone for all cadets.
I was terrified of heights at first, but after doing this, a couple dozen times, you get pretty used to it and you trust your gear and stuff.
So how do you get over that fear of heights?
Just do it over and over again. Just kind of step your way up, make your way up from the main, lower, upper, to gallant, and then make your way to the Royal.
Well, you didn't look like you were afraid at all.
Thanks, yeah.
Did you get a good picture for us?
I hope so.
Did you notice how small the deck of the Eagle looked when she got all the way to the top of the mast? And I like the cadet that told us, I've done it dozens of times, and yet your heart still races. And it was spectacular. And one that astounded me, she went all the way up with that head camera on, and we had sound on it, and I didn't hear her breathing hard at all. I've done it, and I can assure you I was breathing hard when I finally got to the top of the rig. Pretty special stuff. Well, as I've mentioned, it's been raining in New York, but yet, luckily, Ayo has been around the docks yesterday talking to some people about the spectacle of the tall ships and what's going on in New York Harbor. So let's once again join Ayo at the docks of the Intrepid.
Gary, I'm here with Chief Petty Officer Ryan Wallow and his family. We're here at the Intrepid, and I just want to find out from you what it's like to be here as an officer in the Navy on the 250th anniversary of our country. What does that mean to you?
It's absolutely incredible. I've done 16 years of service, and this is just a culmination of everything that my service has meant to not just myself, but my family, and giving back to our great nation. And it's fantastic to be here on the 250th.
And what's your name?
Ashley. I'm mom and supporter of this one.
How long have you two been married?
11 years.
11 years, and that's the whole time that you've been in the Navy?
Just about. Been in 16 years, and we got married about 5 years after I joined.
So what's it like for you? You're married to an officer. Do you travel a lot too?
Yes, we travel a lot. We stay with them as much as we can, but we basically just stay home and protect the home front and make sure you can come back to something safe.
I love that. And who do we have here?
My name is Dean.
How old are you, Dean?
8.
8. It looks like you had some ice cream earlier that was a little blue, was it?
No, it was Gatorade.
Oh, it was Gatorade. So what do you think about today?
Good.
Yeah? Did you see any fireworks yesterday?
No.
Why not? Oh my goodness, and what's your name?
Jetson.
Jetson.
And I'm Dean's older brother.
Yeah, we got some jokesters here. Tell me about your hat.
Who's your hat from?
It's from
the police, right? New York police.
Are you going to be a police officer when you get bigger?
No, I'm going to be a police officer for Halloween.
Oh, much more. That's so much more important. So Ryan, tell me. I mean, this is special to have your boys here with you. Right? Tell me more.
So I've been gone for 15 out of the past 18 months. So it's been great to get the family out here. I've been able to spend a great quality time, about 16 days with them. So it's great to be finally home.
Oh, that's so special. And I can imagine that your work is not that easy, right? Tell me what is a chief petty officer?
So we are the deck plate leaders. We give the guidance to our superior officers, the junior officers, so to speak. So the ensigns that come in right out of either the academy or whatever commissioning source. So roughly about 22 years old, we're in charge of their professional development, as well as our 18-year-old, fresh out of high school boot camp graduates.
And for you, is the Navy a career?
It is. I've done 16 years, and I plan on doing 20.
All right. Oh, you're almost there.
I am.
Uh-oh. What comes after that?
I'm going to be teaching down in Dam Neck, Virginia, and after that, get to go retire.
Now, is the Navy an occupation that you see for your children?
I do. It's definitely changed a lot since I've joined. Some for better, actually a lot for better. I definitely want them to at least give some form of service, whether that's Navy, Marine Corps, Army, Air Force. I've had a lot of Air Force and Navy in my family, as well as Ashley. So I definitely want them to do some form of service to give back to the country.
Ashley, you have 2 young boys. They can actually be here for the 50th, the 300th celebration. Can you imagine that, these guys 50 years from now?
It's so hard to imagine. I hope that they come back and they enjoy it and maybe come back as a sailor. That would be pretty cool.
How old will you be in 50 years?
I don't know.
58. 58 years old. And how old will you be?
5.
You'll be 55. Thank you again for sharing your family experience here today with us. I am with 2 beautiful women here who are visiting. Actually, they live here in New York, but they're originally from Ukraine. Lena and Anna. Yes. Tell me, what's this like to be here at the Intrepid?
Okay, first of all, hi all, and happy 4th of July. I'm absolutely happy and I'm used to be here only because I have this passion. I don't know where I got this from, but I love the sails. So when I saw that it's going to be today parked at the pier, without no doubt, and the heat went down a little bit, I wanted to come here absolutely to show my mom and see it for myself. It's very exciting.
Yes, I can imagine, because when do you get a chance to see like the Amerigo Vespucci, these tall, beautiful ships? This is not something that you see all the time at all.
That's right. And also, I read about it before, that it's one of the biggest ships in the world, I believe. And it's coming from Italy, and I love Italian food, so it was a bingo.
And there are a lot of Italian, good-looking sailors here, too. But that's another story. Now, does your mom speak English?
Unfortunately, no. She's just learning. I brought her from Ukraine a few years ago, so she's getting there.
What has her experience been like so far that she shared with you?
She absolutely loves it. It's very different, of course, different culture, traditions, mentality, but she loves USA, and she can call herself New Yorker right now because she's been here for 4 years now. And she was actually the one who made me come here today. She was like, don't be lazy, let's get up and just come here.
I love it. And what are you looking forward to in addition to what you've already seen today?
So unfortunately, we didn't get our tickets to get inside of the boat. I'm going to try to do it right now. We're also going to go to Pier 92. I believe there are more boats there. So yeah, just to experience it and enjoy the day.
I love it. And so this is the 250th anniversary of the United States. You're from a whole other country. Can you still appreciate the magnitude of today?
Absolutely. I've been living here for 18 years now, so it's been a while. I consider myself as an American for sure, and absolutely grateful for everything, for all the opportunities, all the friends, and everything I have in this country. So this is my second hometown for sure.
I have with me Thomas Frezza, who is a historian with the Navy, and he's got a special guest that he's going to introduce to us. Let's start with you and what you do.
Yes. So, again, I work for the Naval History and Heritage Command. We're the Navy's history department. We're headquartered in Washington, D.C. at the Washington Navy Yard, and we're in charge of all of the Navy's artifacts and their entire archives, too. Over 600,000 artifacts located in 10 museums all across the country, and we also loan a lot of artifacts out too. The majority of the U.S. Navy marked aircraft aboard the Intrepid actually belong to us.
That's incredible. How many thousands of pieces are we talking, or is it hundreds of thousands of pieces?
About 600,000 artifacts all across the country, and it ranges from the tiniest metals to USS Nautilus, the first nuclear sub, which is up in Groton, Connecticut.
What's one of your favorite pieces?
Oh boy, I have a lot of different favorite pieces, but one of them is probably there's a dog uniform from the Korean War of a dog mascot off of a U.S. Navy vessel.
Okay, so we didn't plan this, but that is the perfect segue to show you Doggy Bond, who is sitting on my foot, which I have heard is a protective measure. That means that they love me. And so tell me about Bond.
So Bond is actually Commander Bond. He is our command's facilities dog. So he's trained as a PTSD service dog, but instead of for one person, it's our entire command that he works for. And think of it as canine intervention. So if somebody's having a stressful day, he's there and will alert to them and go over and rest his head on their lap or poke him in the leg to say, hey, you seem stressed. Why don't you pet me for a bit?
Has he been trained especially for that? And what's that program like?
Yes, he has been trained especially for that by America's Vet Dogs. They're out of Long Island, actually, Smithtown, and it's about a 2-year program. They start at 8 weeks old, and they go through all sorts of training before being assigned to a different command. So, again, they usually train service dogs for veterans, but sometimes those service dogs become facility dogs for the military.
And does Bond stay with you the whole time?
That he does. He lives in my house, and he's not officially my dog until he retires. Then I can adopt him.
How long does it take for them to be retired, or how long do they stay in service?
It really all depends on how they're doing health-wise. There's actually a dog at Andrews Air Force Base. His name is Cleo, and he's 10 years old and loves coming into work.
Okay, I love Cleo already because that was the name of my dog.
Oh, nice.
So I'm feeling a bond here with, is it almost like James Bond?
Yes. and in fact, that's why he's a commander. He was originally going to be enlisted, and then we saw his name and said, James Bond was a commander in the Royal Navy. If we're going to have a Bond, he's going to be Commander Bond.
I love it. So he is located here on the East Coast, or he travels as well?
He is located in Washington, D.C. at the Washington Navy Yard with us, but he does travel all across the country with us, sharing naval history, and you'll find dogs like him at different bases all throughout the country. And the Navy is actually deploying dogs like him out to the fleet right now.
I love this. So Gary, here we have, can we hear? Gary, I'm sorry, we have a helicopter going by, but I mean, what incredible story this is, right? That we have Bond, who is a commissioned PTSD dog, helping the naval fleet all across the world, but especially in D.C. And thank you to Tom Frezza, which is like strawberry, for taking the time to really speak to us and bring him here to us.
My pleasure.
Who wouldn't love a dog named Commander Bond, James Bond? Very cool. And you had to like the two young boys, 5 years old and 8 years old, speculating whether they would be at a Tall Ships thing 50 years from now? How old would you be? Still 5. No, I think you'll be 55. And the young lady who was here in the U.S. from Ukraine for the past 18 years and brought her mother over, who was learning English. Typical people here on the waterfront of New York, on the Intrepid Pier. Ayo, thank you very much for those reports. We have 2 more tall ships to look at. The Marcia comes from Romania, and we caught up with Marcia when she was in Baltimore before coming up to New York. And when we're done with that, we're going to go aboard the Juan Sebastian L. de Cano, which is the 3rd largest tall ship in the world. And this vessel, built in 1928, has traveled 2.3 million miles during her career. So let's go take a look at the Marcia and move on from there to the Elcano.
Hello everyone, I am Commander Silviu Moraru, the captain of training ship Mircea. I am aboard Mircea since 2024. Well, we left Romania on 16th of April. We already had 6 ports on our voyages. Now we are participating on the Sail 250 activities. We are on sea for more than 2 months. Those 2 months were actually a good opportunity to see them, how they work, how they interact with the other members of the crew, and how they can do their work on board. Being on New York on the 4th of July celebration, I believe it's very important for us because of 250 for the US, and because this is the 4th time for the Romanian ship when we cross the Atlantic to represent Romania in this kind of activities. This ship was built in 1938 in Blomont Voss shipyard in Hamburg, Germany. After that, in 1939, she was commissioned to the Romanian Navy, and for more than 87 years we are doing the practice of the 2nd year cadets from the Naval Academy. So the practice is happening on board during the voyages that can be in the Mediterranean Sea, in the Atlantic Ocean, in the Black Sea, wherever we are planning to do that. They are learning something that you can't learn from courses in the Naval Academy and from manuals. So they are learning responsibility, they are learning how to be good Navy officers. In the future, they are learning teamwork, and also they are learning how to be somehow good ambassadors of Romania, because the role of this ship is to represent our country, Romania, over the seas and oceans of the world. So the flag, as you can see it, which is blue, yellow and red, it has a Romanian story behind, about the sky, about the yellow of the sun and the Romanian grains, and about the red blood of our ancestors that fought for Romania. The energy on board is coming most likely from the age of our cadets and our entire crew, because they are around 22 years, the average of the entire crew. So we are all very young. We are having a crew of 170 people on board. 80 of them are cadets. So sailing near all the other sailing ships, most of them are probably like us, training ships for the cadets of some other navies. It's somehow very, very important for us, because we do have the opportunity to change the ideas and experiences with all the others. We would like for our visitors to take away a little part of Romania, because this ship takes all over the world the Romanian traditions and the Romanian spirit. So this is the most important thing that they can carry with them after leaving from Mircea.
Built in 1928, the Juan Sebastian de Elcano will travel more than 2.3 million miles in her lifetime. Now, in the year she was built, this will be the time that Stalin banished Trotsky, one of the leaders of the Bolshevik Revolution and early architect of the Soviet state. It is also the same year that penicillin was discovered by Sir Alexander Fleming. He will later introduce this mold byproduct to help cure bacterial infections. In 1928, the novel All Quiet on the Western Front was published. This realistic depiction of World War I's trench warfare, which was seen through the perspective of young soldiers, struck a chord with the war's survivors, soldiers and civilians alike, and around the world it provokes strong reactions. In the same year as this publication, we also get the first non-stop flight from Europe to North America.
And here comes Spain's magnificent Juan Sebastian de Elcano, named for the explorer who completed the first circumnavigation of the globe. Nearly a century after she first set sail, she continues to carry Spain's proud maritime heritage to ports around the world, including New York, for America's 250th birthday. With 4 towering masts, a length of more than 370 feet, and nearly 400 sailors and midshipmen aboard, she's one of the largest and most impressive ships in the parade of sail. Over her lifetime, Elcano has sailed more than 2.3 million miles. One final bit of history. Every Spanish naval officer spends part of their training aboard Juan Sebastian de Elcano, making her one of Spain's most treasured symbols of seamanship and national pride. It is so much fun looking at these tall ships and hearing their stories and seeing the passion of the sailors and officers aboard these vessels, and all happening here in New York, which will set the stage for the next time, the next port they'll be going to, which in our case is Boston, Massachusetts. So Boston, get ready. You're in for a really good show. Well, it's been great fun talking with Ayo. She gets the Double Ration and Rum Award for her time on the docks down on Intrepid, and she talked to an awful lot of interesting people. And Ayo, one of those people that you spoke with, which I was quite intrigued with, was Ife, your daughter. You know, she looks like to be exactly your height, and yet she's only 11 years old. And when you mentioned the Amerigo Vespucci, she said that was a fancy name, which I thought was quite colorful. And of course, along the way, you met people, the dog, we saw some planes and the Concorde behind you. And what's your overall takeaway from the weekend?
Gary, thank you so much for an incredible weekend. It's been so nice spending it with you. Your knowledge and expertise is just bar none. And I want to just thank the crew here that have been endured the heat, the rain, the weather, every single weather, including my 11-year-old daughter. I don't know if you can see them all, but thank you for all of the hard work that has paid off in spades today on this beautiful weather. Even if it's raining, it's so beautiful here at the Intrepid. Here for Sail Forth 250, the celebration of America's not just history, but also our future.
Well, Ayo, if you're to write an article about your experience over the past 3 days, what would be your lead? What would be the topic you'd like to lead with that your readers understood what you experienced?
My experience has been incredible. I just can't even put into words. I think it's going to take me a few days to just process it all, right? To be here. First of all, I love being by the water. So this is my favorite happy place. To be able to meet new people from around the world, to share their experiences, to know that there's a link that they can go to sailforth.org and watch this over and over again and have memories for their friends and families to be a part of, just like you and I have.
The Concorde that's sitting there behind you right now, does it look fast to you?
The Concorde, yes, it's still behind us. Unfortunately, no one was able to go in today or over the weekend. Maybe they'll open that up again after the Intrepid resumes its normal everyday activities. But it's all about the tall ships here. All day through tomorrow, last tour at 3 p.m. Then, as you know, goes all the way up the coast of Boston. And maybe I'll get in my car and follow the ships along. You never know.
Oh, that'd be great fun. Listen, with your daughter, I have a book called Sailing Fundamentals, and you get me your address, and I'm going to send it to her so we can encourage her to get out there in the water and learn a little bit more about how to sail a boat.
Thank you for that. I told you yesterday, I want to get her on the ships and sailing. So I think this will be the inspiration that she needs, especially potentially learning from someone like you, especially through the book.
Thank you. Well, Ayo, it's been great fun working with you. Really good job out there, persevering with hot weather, storms, clouds, breeze, no wind at all. You get, like I said, the double ration of rum for your work. And please thank the crew, Tara and Lauren and the others that were with you out there.
I certainly will. Thank you to the crew in the studio as well.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Ayo. And with that, we bring our Sail Forth 250 coverage to a close. 3 unforgettable days here in New York Harbor. A once-in-a-generation celebration of America's 250th, told through the majesty of tall ships from around the world. Before we sign off, one last time, we want to thank the many hands that made this broadcast possible. To our incredible production team crew here at Sorrentino Media Studio 6, the directors, engineers, camera operators, graphics, and audio teams who worked tirelessly across all 3 days of coverage, thank you for bringing this event to life. Our deepest gratitude to the entire Sailforth 250 team, whose 6 years of planning and dedication turned a vision into the spectacle we've all witnessed this week. To the captains and crews of every ship that graced these waters from around the nation and around the world, thank you for sharing your vessels, your traditions, your seamanship with all of us. And a special thank you to the team at the Intrepid Sea and Air Space Museum for their partnership and hospitality throughout this event, and to our friends at EarthCam, whose live video feeds gave us breathtaking views from every quarter of the harbor day after day. And thank you, finally, to everyone who tuned in over these days, everyone who lined the shores, and everyone who played a part, large or small, in making this celebration one for the history books. Thank you for sharing with us. And for all of us here at Sailforth 250, I'm Gary Jobson. Fair winds and following seas, and don't forget, sail swiftly.